Cool Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the the Revolution. And we got a World War III alert. We got a World War III alert. But before we go there, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know we live. Support the House of Revolution. Is it true that the head of the Israeli army is dead? Is it true that he got caught slipping and was murdered like they caught Israel slipping? Oh, we finna get into it. This is groundbreaking. Bad news. Look like it beat Israel home. Hezbollah alive and kicking. What happened here?
At least 65 people have been injured in a drone strike on northern Israel. Hezbollah has described launch.
If they say 65 people is injured, that means 160 with 30 to 40 no longer with us. But that's small potatoes. Because we're talking about the head of the Israeli army. It's all over social media that he got whacked. Now, they don't want to say that, but we're going to get to the videos discussing that.
Launching a swarm of attack
This is going to be
on a military
devastating for Israel, humiliating for Israel and the U.S. if it's true. The head of Israel army got whacked.
Camp in Binyamina, just south of Haifa. It appears that many of the injured people were in a communal canteen when it was struck. Hezbollah said its attack.
Injured people, soldiers, ma'am. Soldiers. No, it's innocent people in Lebanon that was being killed. Hezbollah is striking soldiers. So don't, and it's something in a communal, a military base, ma'am. Please quit trying to give the people fake news. Hezbollah struck a military base, and they won't even show us the actual picture footage. And I'm not going to dig around for it because they live and shut the channel over. They don't want the humiliation of. I guess they were somewhere eating. Celebrating war, and got caught slipping.
Attack was in response for Israeli strikes inside Lebanon. Let's get the latest on this developing story tonight. Our correspondent Anna Foster is in Beirut. Tell us more about what we think has happened here, Anna.
Hezbollah live and
well, Jane, what we're seeing on social media tonight is pictures of what you say appears to be a dining hall at a military facility with a huge hole.
Now, look, I'm going to show you how disgusting the news is. This lady is on BBC News, 16 million subscribers. She's describing a video. Show us the video. Hell no, they're not finna show you that type of humiliation. I told you about that murder porn. You show us the destruction of Gaza. You show us the destruction of Beirut in Lebanon. Why won't you show us this destruction? Because they don't want you to see the humiliation. She's describing to you a scene. Let me rewind it, because that's disgusting. But this fake news. But I got the real news for y'all. They can't hide it.
Well, Jane, what we're seeing on social media tonight is pictures of what you say appears to be a dining hall at a military facility with a huge hole torn in the roof, with chairs overturned and spread around the floor. This appears to be a significant attack by Hezbollah.
A dining hall. Oh, they was eating, and Hezbollah caught them having a meal. Wow. Hezbollah got some good intelligence. When Nasrallah got killed, y'all talking about how, Israeli intelligence. Spies in Hezbollah. Is it spies in the IDF? How did they? And you keep talking about these people. Ma'am, who are they? Now, they told y'all a military hall. You telling me the head of the Israeli military was sitting there talking war, celebrating war, and got caught slipping? Yes.
On a military installation inside northern Israel. Now, volunteer paramedics, rescuers say that around 65 people have been taken to hospital, some of them critically injured, some of them more lightly so. Of course, the question is how Hezbollah and to evade Israel's very sophisticated missile defense system with this drone attack. Hezbollah are firing several hundred missiles and rockets still every day into northern Israel. Most of them were picked up. This one wasn't. So questions will be asked.
Y'all killed their leader, and it looked like they didn't kill the leader of the Israeli army, which is going to be ultimate humiliation. That man ain't dead. That man didn't come on TV, let the world know he's still alive.
About how it's managed to get through. And here in Lebanon today as well, fierce fighting has continued. The Lebanese Health Ministry say that 51 people have been killed today, nearly 200 injured, as those fierce Israeli airstrikes continue in the south of Lebanon, Jane.
Yeah.
Anna, thank you so much. Anna Foster there with the very latest in Beirut. Well, those attacks come at the end of a day of heightened tension in southern Lebanon, with the UN peacekeeping mission there insisting that its flags will continue to fly.
We here, my people here for groundbreaking news. They don't want to hear about regular threats. From Benjamin Netanyahu. He next. They looking for him. Peace and blessings. Benjamin Netanyahu, why you wasn't at that damn dinner? We heard you was going to be there. Ha! You decided not to go at the last minute, right? Got your army chief bumped off.
In a significant development, social media, particularly Twitter, has exploded with videos and photos of the damage caused by Hezbollah attacks on a key Israeli army base in the Binyamina region of North Israel. Hezbollah has claimed the responsibility, saying that they targeted a training camp of the Israeli Defense Force, also known as the IDF, Golani Brigade, the dreaded Golani Brigade in the area, which is based between Tel Aviv and Haifa. Hezbollah said that they targeted the Israeli military camp with drones that could not be detected by the Israeli Iron Dome. That was because the much publicized Israeli Iron Dome provided by America was busy shooting down a barrage of rockets fired by Hezbollah from Lebanon. Now, social media users, particularly with significantly large followers, have shared some dramatic visuals of the damage suffered by the Israeli military in today's Hezbollah drone attacks. Once again, I can't share those visuals here, but you can watch all of those videos on Janata Ka Reporter's Telegram channel. I have already uploaded there. Details are on the screen. So it's important that you subscribe to that channel to watch those videos and the other videos that, again, for obvious reasons, I can't share on YouTube. Now, what is chilling here is the claim made by users with significantly large followers. And these users are commentators and journalists, mostly based in America. Now, they have claimed that the head of IDF, Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, has been assassinated. The user, Dr. Anastasia Maria Lupis, who has more than 1 million followers and frequently tweets against Israeli atrocities, he wrote on Twitter, and I quote, "Initial reports confirm the assassination of Israeli Army Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi," end of quote. American commentator Jackson Hinkle, who has more than 2 million followers, wrote on Twitter, and I quote, "Breaking unconfirmed reports that Hezbollah assassinated Israeli Army Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi using advanced fiber optic drones," end of quote. Similar claims were made by other users. Indian origin commentator based in Sweden, also a professor at a Swedish university, Ashok Swen, wrote on Twitter, and I quote, "Nearly 40 Israeli soldiers dead or wounded after a Hezbollah drone attack on the dining hall of Golani Brigade base in Binyamina, north of Haifa. Hezbollah is fighting hard despite the death of Nasrallah," end of quote. Now, Janata Ka Reporter is not in a position to confirm or deny these claims. But under the media censorship rules in Israel, media outlets are not allowed to run stories on the damage caused to the military installations without the claim being approved by the military. Some local news agencies have said that at least 3 Israeli soldiers have been killed, with many sustaining critical injuries.
Dozens dead.
However, there is no response from the Israeli military itself on the claims that its chief had been assassinated by Hezbollah. If indeed the claims of IDF chief's assassination is true, this will indeed be a huge blow to Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and now Lebanon. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform on buymecoffee.com and Patreon.
Salute, Queen. Let's hear the lies of CNN. You see, they want to lie so much, but they're admitting that Israeli troops is dead.
CNN's Nick Robertson, who is in Tel Aviv, and we are following breaking news out of the Middle East. At least 4 Israeli soldiers have been killed, dozens more.
If they say 4 dead, that means 14 dead. This is how Israel play. They say hundreds wounded, but we talking about the big fish. Where is he at? He's alive. Come out wherever you are. Show the world that they did not assassinate you like you did Nasrallah.
More injured after Hezbollah drones hit an Israeli army base near Haifa. The drone attack is one of the bloodiest since the war started last October. Hezbollah has claimed responsibility. Let's go down to CNN's Nick Robertson, who is in Tel Aviv and joins us now live. Nick, this seems like a major moment to mark.
They're looking for Benjamin Netanyahu.
It is. The IDF has confirmed that this was a military base that was struck. That forced.
Look at his eyes. Look how shocked they are. You ain't fighting Hamas. Boy, you at war with Hezbollah. You killed the chief. You should have knew this was going to happen. Reporter, man, go hide out somewhere, boy. You don't want this smoke. You don't want this smoke. You've been disrespecting Hezbollah, calling them terrorists. Where is Benjamin Netanyahu? They're looking for him. Have you seen him? Tell his ass come out there bunker.
4 soldiers are dead, 7 are critically injured. Medics on the scene describe it as a very difficult situation. More than 60 casualties, they said, evacuated to 8 different hospitals by ambulance and by helicopter. But just, you have to...
60 wounded. I'm talking about critical here, man. People on life support. The people gonna pass away. They playing with the numbers here. What's wrong with you, man? Tell the people dozens dead. Remember, before this war, Israel was supposed to be super soldiers. That's serious business. They don't die. They live forever. But we're seeing that's not quite so true. Before this war, we heard that the Iron Dome was no one could penetrate the Iron Dome. Oh yeah? Tell it to the head of the Israel army, who allegedly no longer with us because he thought the Iron Dome could defend him.
Stress here that this base is 40 miles from the border with Lebanon.
Yeah, so what?
That's a long way. It's closer to here in Tel Aviv than it is to the actual fighting.
There ain't no long way. There ain't no long way. Hezbollah, Iran, I told you they touch every square inch of anything in Israel. There ain't no long way. There ain't no long way. You shocked? You ain't seen that yet. Why the hell is Benjamin Netanyahu? They're looking for him.
At the war front. So this is very significant, and it absolutely does seem to be perhaps the bloodiest incident targeting and hitting IDF forces away from the front line since October the 7th last year. The IDF chief spokesman has been to the site tonight, describing what has happened. He's described that Hezbollah managed to get a drone into the base, that it came across the northern border from Lebanon around about 7 p.m. He said the situation is now under IDF control, but what he describes is a scenario that requires investigation and reveals that they've come up short on defenses, and he says the defenses need improving too.
We are now busy contacting their families. All of the soldiers at the base were instructed to call home.
Why are you in front of a green screen, man? Why are you underground in the bunker, bro? You quit hiding underground and bring your ass above ground and talk to the people. You think we're stupid? They looking for you too. You've been talking shit since the beginning. You stop hiding using green screens to fool the people.
And update their families that they are okay. We are managing the incident. We will learn from and investigate the incident, how a UAV entered without an alert at the base. The threat of UAVs is a threat we are dealing with since the beginning of the war. We need an improvement to our defense.
So Hezbollah over recent days has been threatening to target bases and collections of Israeli troops away from the border. This is something that's been threatened.
Bro, you see, they don't want to say Hezbollah is targeting Israeli troops. They want to say civilian infrastructure. They want to say the civilian population so bad, but you can't lie. They're targeting the troops, and they look for Benjamin Netanyahu. You can get this over real quick. We just tell them where he at.
To do. Now, after this strike tonight, they claimed that this was the act of a suicide drone, and Hezbollah describes a scenario where they appear to have tried to cheat it or fool the air defense systems here in Israel. They fired, they say, lots of rockets, dozens of rockets into northern Israel. And then after that, with the intention, they say, of confusing the air defense systems, and then sent a squad of suicide drones to target the base. Now, that may be an overstatement of what they did, but it clearly shows that Hezbollah has been trying to find, over recent weeks, a way to get around the air defense systems here, which until now have been pretty effective. On Friday, a Hezbollah drone managed to get within a few miles of Tel Aviv and hit a nursing home not far away. And that was after intercept efforts. So Hezbollah seems to be refining their tactics here.
So after Hezbollah hit a nursing home, and then he told the truth, after intercept efforts. No, your intercept rockets hit that goddamn nursing home, bro. Hezbollah ain't looking, they wasting no missiles on no nursing homes. Fool, they looking for the troops. And Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, and as you heard from the IDF spokesman there, they absolutely need to improve. This is a very, very deadly and bloody day for the IDF.
Humiliation.
It certainly is. I also want to ask you about this other major development. The U.S. now saying it's going to send an advanced anti-missile system to Israel along with about 100 U.S. troops to operate it.
Bad news.
How significant is that?
They can't save Israel.
It's very significant. This system, the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense missile system, is designed to intercept ballistic missiles. And it's ballistic missiles that Iran fired at Israel 2 weeks ago, more than 180 of them. Some of them got through to bases and other sites.
Bro, I thought they had the Patriot system. I thought they had the Iron Dome. What, you need more stuff? I thought you said Iran only hit empty fields. They only hit empty fields, right? See, these people are liars, man. But the more to the story is 100 U.S. troops got to go work this air defense system, because the Israelis can't do it. See, this is what Putin talking about. See, he threatening to kill them if they try this in Ukraine. You see, this they trying in Ukraine, but see, they trying to get away with that shit in Israel, but they still gonna get the business from Hezbollah and Iran. But this is an act of war. So you have the U.S. troops over there helping fight, helping conquer. That's what that is. They're not just defending.
In Israel, military bases. So with this THAAD system, it should give Israel more protection if Iran strikes them again with ballistic missiles. The Houthis in Yemen, the Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon have also been firing ballistic missiles here. But this is a comprehensive system, and 100 troops is about what is normally sent with one of these weapon systems. And it's a comprehensive system that should sort of provide more or less blanket coverage across the whole country and will supplement what Israel's doing already. But I think what it tells us is that the United States and Israel recognize that this perhaps tit-for-tat exchange of missiles with Iran could escalate from here, and Israel needs more protection to withstand it if that's the case.
Certainly. All right, Nick Robertson, really important reporting for us tonight.
Say some little babies. They need more pacifiers, more diapers and blankets too, because they the Israeli diaper force. That's what Hamas said, that they wear diapers. I'm trying to tell you. They done caught them crying and pissing and shitting all over themselves. But it's a sad day for Israel. Look at them. They crying in these pictures. Look at them. They crying down there. What happened? This is what happened when you fight men and you ain't killing innocent people. This is called war.
Secondly,
you fighting Iran and Hezbollah, your ass ain't just gonna be hiding out in Israel. U.S. can't save you.
We're going to start off with what's happening from Lebanon, because this is the most important thing. So these are the scenes coming from Israel now. Reports confirming over 67
IDF.
IDF.
Never show you these people crying right here on the news. We just watched the news. I showed y'all BBC and I showed y'all CNN. They never gonna show you people on their knees crying, blood, bandage. They ain't gonna show that because that's called humiliation. They only want you to see the Palestinians and our people. They don't want to see their victims. They want to see the people they conquer crying in fear, trembling. They want to see them superior. They don't look so superior right now.
IDF troops wounded after a drone from Hezbollah targeted a Golani base in Binyamina, which is just south to Haifa, when they were having dinner.
And the Golani,
apparently, this drone that Hezbollah sent got through the Iron Dome and the defense systems of Israel. Hezbollah confirmed that they sent multiple drones, but some reports said one drone reached this area, launched a missile, at least one missile, and then landed and exploded, meaning it's a suicide drone, but it has the capacity to throw 1 or 2 55 missiles on the enemy target. And Israel is admitting that 67 people are wounded, many of them in critical condition. Now initial reports are saying 4 critical. Israel is confirming 1 at least dead. But again, the reports are coming very quickly, one after the other, but we still haven't heard something official from the IDF. So we still haven't heard an official statement from Daniel Hagari, and we still haven't seen Herzi Halevi. There are reports that Herzi Halevi was the target and that he was with them. There are reports circulating on social media that he was killed. But again, we had such reports previously when it comes to Yoav Gallant, and we haven't seen anything coming from Herzi Halevi. Did something happen? Are they hiding something? Could be. But so far, there's one thing that is certain. They are censoring a lot. They are not even admitting where this location was. They're not even saying that it's Binyamina. We know it's Binyamina. Binyamina is a location south to Haifa, just above Netanya, deeper into Israeli territory, still generally considered to be part of the north. And they have a big Golani base. And there are many questions after this attack. Firstly, how on earth are Hezbollah still capable of conducting such attacks when Israel is telling us that, you know, they've been hitting them with blow after blow? Secondly, where are your defense systems, Israel? Thirdly, how comes your troops are sitting there and eating, right, at the same time? How comes all of this is happening and we don't have any security measures coming from Israel? There are many questions around this area, surrounding this, and we have now more sirens coming in the north, in the Haifa area, in the northern parts of Israel, expecting more and more attacks coming from Hezbollah. Now, apparently, there's one thing that we can say. Israel decreased the level of risk or warning when it comes to social gatherings. So Hezbollah are clearly reading what Israel is doing, and they are preparing their attacks based on that. They're preparing their attacks based on that, and they are conducting successful attacks deep into Israeli territories, and they are killing people from the Israeli army. This is the biggest number of casualties since October the 7th, ladies and gentlemen. It's nothing light what happened today. This is the biggest number of casualties all at once from a Hezbollah attack ever in Israel that Israel admitted. And this is the biggest number of casualties in Israel altogether in one day, in one attack, following October the 7th. Meaning, this is very serious. This is not light. And this is coming with more Israeli preparation up north. What are they doing? Well, they are saying that they're deploying more divisions. I'm not sure why they're deploying more divisions now. Because their divisions that have been already there are not able to invade properly into Lebanese territories. Just certain locations where Hezbollah probably want to lure them in. But they are reinforcing. Maybe they just want to send a message to their population that, okay, look, we have more divisions going there and we're serious and, we're going to take them down. But they are trying to invade Lebanon from the southwestern area, meaning they're trying to invade now by the coast, like what they've done in Gaza when they went through Al-Rashid Street from the north, then to the western part. They're trying to do that in Lebanon. They're not having a lot of success when it comes to the invasion, but you might see them entering to a certain location and then being attacked with ambushes from Hezbollah. There's also something that's been happening. There haven't been a lot of intense attacks in Beirut or the southern suburb of Beirut. Some people are saying that, well, some officials are saying in Lebanon that there's a lot of diplomatic movement. They're getting certain reassurances from the US. Israel is denying all of that. We're having no confirmation from the US. What we do know is that there are ongoing attempts to try and reach a solution. But again, when we speak about the situation in Lebanon, there's always attempts to try and de-escalate. However, they're not successful because you're talking about the United States administration that is supporting Israel fully. Now, in Israel, going back to Israel, we have a lot of things are happening. Okay, like for example, look at the scene here. This is a location near Khadera. That's where Israel's biggest or the main electric power plant is there, producing power to most of Israel. And these scenes are just coming from there. And again, you're hearing nothing. Now, from the report, it appears to be that the man is saying that a house is being set alight. Well, from an attack, most likely coming from Hezbollah. But these areas, again, they're very sensitive. So if we're talking about the electric power grids of Israel, and also the area Benyamina where we had this big attack is also close to that location. What are Hezbollah telling Israel? Well, what are they telling Israel is very interesting. What they're telling Israel is that we are only in the initial parts of the beginning. We are only in the beginning of the beginning. So,
see, Israel done already destroyed all kind of so-called Hezbollah headquarters and things of that nature. They deep underground too. But Hezbollah has plenty of room to escalate. You see, they just caught them slipping at a meeting and allegedly probably killed the head of the Israeli army. So they got plenty of room to start hitting all these different meeting facilities and bases. They have plenty of room. They're just letting them know we could have been did this.
We haven't really started yet.
They finna start now.
And if they're doing all of that, and they haven't started yet, well, what are they going to do when they actually start? However, there was this actually, let me share it with you, with some translation coming. Here we go. So this is a person, a senior figure from Hezbollah, who actually made these statements yesterday. But listen to the statements, or part of them. They're quite important and relevant to what's happening today and what's going to happen soon.
عن هذه المجزرة الولايات المتحدة مسؤولة عن هذه المجزرة الوحشية في الضاحية الجنوبية، والسفيرة الأمريكية مسؤولة عما يلحق بالمدنيين وبيوت المدنيين ومنع فرق الإغاثة ومنع فرق الإسعاف من الوصول إلى المنقذين. إنها جريمة ضد الإنسانية، ولكن من يحاسب أمريكا على الجرائم ضد الإنسانية؟ إنما يردع العدو عن جرائمه هو القوة والمقاومة، وليس المجتمع الدولي ولا القرارات الدولية. قلت في الجولة الإعلامية في الضاحية الجنوبية قبل نحو 10 أيام أن ضربة تل أبيب ليست سوى البداية، وما حصل في الأيام الأخيرة في حيفا وعكا ونهاريا وصفد يؤكد أننا لازلنا في البداية. وإلى العدو يقول لن ترى بعد إلا القليل. أؤكد لكم أن المقاومة بخير، وأدقق في العبارة ولا أرتجل. المقاومة بخير وتدير حقل رمايتها وتوقيت صلياتها بما يتناسب مع قراءتها للميدان وظروفه الموضوعية. مخزونها الاستراتيجي بخير، آلاف من المقاتلين الاستشهاديين الكربلائيين في ذروة الجهوزية وأعلى درجة الاستعداد للدفاع عن لبنان، وجاهزون للقتال الضروس ثأرا لدم شهيدنا الأسمى والأغلى والأحب. حتى الآن العدو عاجز برغم استخدامه للمزيد من القوات والفرق والألوية عن التقدم إلى الأمام إلا في حالات محددة، ولا تتزال دباباته تتموضع في الخلف. وإذا سمعتم، وهذه رسالة إلى جمهور المقاومة أولا ولا الإعلام ثانيا، إذا سمعتم أو شاهدتم بعض جنود العدو في هذه القرية أو تلك، أو صورا قديمة في هذا النفق أو ذلك، لا تقلقوا ولا تضعف معنوياتكم، ذلك أنه قرار مسبق عند قيادة المقاومة أن لا تقاتل دفاعا موضوعيا ثابتا، بل دفاعا مرنا متوافقا مع متطلبات الجبهة. إن المعركة مع العدو الصهيوني لا تزال في بداياتها الأولى. بكير 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 كتير الحديث عن الاستثمار السياسي في الداخل، فلا تستعجلوا ولا تحرقوا أصابعكم، أو أنكم لم تتعلموا أبدا من دروس الماضي. وتذكروا أن الإسرائيلي لا يعمل لمصلحتكم، يعمل لمصلحته هو. بكير كتير. ثانيا، نحن لسنا في عام 1982 عندما وصلت الدبابات الإسرائيلية إلى بيروت وغيرت المعادلات السياسية. ما راح أقول أكثر من هيك. ومزقت نسيج الاجتماع اللبناني. كمان ما راح أقول أكثر من هيك. بل نحن كأننا في الأيام الأولى من حرب تموز، عندما استعجل القوم إياهم بإطلاق الأحكام النهائية عن المعركة وهزيمة حزب الله، قبل أن يتبين لهم خطأ ما ذهبوا إليه ويعودوا مجددا إلى رشدهم بعد نهاية الحرب التي خرج حزب الله منها منتصرا وأقوى مما كان. ثالثا، أولويتنا المطلقة الآن هي إلحاق الهزيمة بالعدو وإجباره بالقوة على وقف العدوان. ومع ذلك فإن أي جهد سياسي داخلي أو خارجي لتحقيق وقف العدوان مشكور ما دام متوافقا مع رؤيتنا الشاملة للمعركة وظروفها ونتائجها. وضمن هذه الرؤية يندرج تمسكنا القاطع بالوحدة الوطنية والتضامن الداخلي.
This senior figure from Hezbollah is again saying that this is the beginning, and this was yesterday based on an attack that happened in the southern suburb of Beirut a couple of days before, because we haven't had attacks in the southern suburb of Beirut or Al-Dahiya in the past 48 hours. Again, could be due to diplomatic efforts being taken by the Lebanese officials with the United States or European countries and what have you. Now, it didn't only stop there. We had more reports from Israel, supposedly being surprised as to what Hezbollah is doing. What is Hezbollah doing when it comes to Israel? So we had a report in Ma'arif. Hezbollah moves into fifth gear, they're saying. The unusual message it distributed to the residents of the north. And what is this message? This message is Hezbollah warning the residents of the north, telling them the army is using your houses and properties to conduct attack against us. If you want to be safe and if you want to protect your lives, stay away from all of these locations and don't come anywhere near military bases. And from an Israeli perspective, they're viewing it as if Hezbollah are now threatening the Israeli public because they could be indeed inflicting more harm on the Israeli population now, following increased attacks on military bases or in any other locations that are located within civilian population, like the Israeli Kiryat, for example, or these hubs of the security or military establishment in Israel. They are in very close proximity to civilian population. As a matter of fact, they sometimes plant command bases inside civilian populations, in council estates. We've had these examples in the Galilee when Hezbollah targeted certain units operating from these civilian locations and targeted them directly, by the way, to deliberate attacks without anyone else involved. All right. So this is what's happening on the Lebanese front. We still have censorship from Israel. To this moment, to this minute, we still do not have an official statement coming from the Israeli army. We haven't seen Hagari, we haven't seen Halevi. The only thing that we've seen is that we had multiple drones coming from Lebanon, so most likely from Hezbollah, of course, because Hezbollah confirmed that they sent a squadron of drones, and that Israeli fighter jets were trying to take down this drone, and then it disappeared. But again, you were going to take this report coming from Israel or all of these reports with a pinch of salt. Why? Because, well, if your Air Force detected an object that is from Hezbollah on its way to a military base for Golani, and you have dozens of people, if not hundreds, having dinner together, then why didn't you warn them and take certain actions? You didn't do anything. No, the drone went there, most likely launched a couple of missiles and then exploded within them. And these drones coming from Hezbollah and from Iraq, they're very, specific. They target exactly where they want to target. They'll go through windows and all of these things. So this is what's happening. We still don't have elaboration or more clarification, but there are still sirens in Haifa and in the north. Things are still tense, and Hezbollah have been increasing their levels of attacks, as evident with this biggest attack coming from Hezbollah. Well, biggest attack in terms of numbers of verified, confirmed casualties as confirmed by Israel in one attack. This is what we mean. And that makes it the second biggest attack in terms of casualty numbers confirmed by Israel and the IDF following the 7th of October. What will Israel do after this? We're still waiting to see. We need an official statement coming from the military. We haven't had that yet. But as soon as we have, of course, update everyone about it and then analyze based on what they are saying. However, again, when it comes to previous attacks, as soon as we had something, the military came out and immediately said something. Even with the Iranian attack, and they looked frustrated, they looked baffled, they looked in panic mode, but they still came out and they had a statement just to clarify that we were attacked, and we order everyone, all of the civilians, to follow the demands when it comes to the protection and safety, and wait for further instructions. But now we haven't had that, although this is a very, very big attack coming from Hezbollah. But we will talk about this in due course, especially if there's something popping up. So this is the first part, the northern front, of course.
Of many parts, widely read, erudite in the extreme, articulate, but above all brave. He did not go with the tide. He was not a weather vane. He stood up for what he believed in, always, even in private conversations that I had with him so many times in London especially. He never once sought to elide the fundamental difference between us. But that didn't mean we couldn't be friends. In fact, the three most fulsome tributes to Alex Salmond since the sad demise in North Macedonia on Friday came from David Cameron, the former Conservative Prime Minister, the Right Honourable David Davis, a former Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and, if I may say so, me, yours truly. We were across the political aisle from him, but we respected him, admired the way he would disrupt the most august parliamentary occasions, like the budget, when no one else would have thought to do so, and if they had, would not have had the courage to do so. Alex Salmond was effectively crucified by his own party members. His successor, Nicola Sturgeon, and the gangrenous crew around her conspired to set up Alex Salmond on fake sex charges, on which he was acquitted by a majority female jury in front of a woman judge in the High Court in Edinburgh. But the SNP never forgave him. Although they issued condolences on the night of his demise, they had already excised him 5 years before from all and any mention on their website of the SNP. The SNP killed Alex Salmond. They contributed mightily to his death. If not for them, he might well still be alive. Indeed, if they had gotten their way, he would have died in prison, a 70-year-old man, overweight, Defense Forces, the most senior military officer in Israel, of the Israeli chief of the Defense Forces, the most senior military officer in Israel. In the last few minutes, in a Hezbollah rocket strike from a drone, air-to-surface missile from a drone, first time that has ever happened, if confirmed, is also of enormous significance. Israel is used to murdering everybody else's military and political commanders. They are not used to having it happen to them in return. Indeed, the strike on the barracks of the Golani Brigade in Akkar, a town I know well, but have never been in, except I've known thousands of Palestinian refugees from there, living in the refugee camps in in Lebanon. Acre is a town of some historical, biblical, and now military significance. It's far into Israel. Tel Aviv is far into Israel. Haifa is far into Israel. This war is not now being fought in the northern settlements, just across the Lebanese border. This war is not now being fought just in the southern suburbs of Beirut, in the Bekaa Valley, or in the south of Lebanon more generally. This war has been taken to the enemy. And the Lebanese resistance has shown the adeptness and determination that I predicted to you here they would deploy, notwithstanding the murder of their leader, Said Hassan Nasrallah. I told you and anyone else who would listen that the idea that killing the leader of a resistance movement as big, as resilient, and as skilled, and as weaponized as the Lebanese resistance was for the birds. I told you that the Lebanese resistance would now fight with renewed vigor and with messianic zeal, for the word Hezbollah means party of God. They believe that they are the party of God, the army of God. They believe that if they fall in this conflict with Israel, that they are going immediately to a better place. No need for the day of judgment. They believe that they are now in heaven when they fall. So the idea that the conscripts of the Israeli army, the beachnicks of the Israeli army, the New Yorkers, Parisians, Londoners, and others who went there for a land of milk and honey, to take someone else's land, to take someone else's house, were ever going to prevail against a determined army fighting to defend its own land, is equally for the birds. With their headphones on and their TikTok dances done, the Israeli army doesn't want to be there, and it will want to be there even less now that they know that in their rear areas, like Acre, far away from the front line, that so many of them could be killed and injured. The helicopters are chopping through the skies right now all over Israel, taking the dead and the wounded to hospital and to the morgue. And in the battlefield proper itself, in the south of Lebanon, Israel has not advanced more than 100 meters. Not one town has been taken by the invading Israeli army. Sure, they can deal out death and destruction from the air. That's what they are good at, and they are doing so. In significant numbers, the people of Lebanon are falling, but not quite as significant as in a refugee camp I have known, it seems, it feels, all of my life. The camp of Jabalia was where I saw border guards, Druze Israeli border guards, forcing Palestinian women to clean the street with toothbrushes. That's right, with basins of soapy water and toothbrushes. I watched them as they forced these women on all fours to clean the street of the camp with toothbrushes. I watched them with an official of the United Nations. The United Nations, which is now all but destroyed by the country which was given birth by the United Nations. That's right, Israel came into being as a result of a resolution of the United Nations, since when they have killed the United Nations Special Envoy, Count Bernadotte of Sweden. They have murdered hundreds of United Nations officials. They have been caught on camera announcing that they would like to destroy the United Nations building in New York. They have bombed and obliterated the United Nations buildings in Gaza and in Lebanon. They are destroying schools. They are destroying United Nations medical facilities. They are destroying food warehouses with the wherewithal to keep the captives in the extermination camp alive. And yet, no matter how many United Nations officials they kill, they are still allowed to sit in the United Nations. I say to the Secretary General, Mr. Gutierrez, if he's a man at all, he will tomorrow move the expulsion of Israel from the United Nations itself. It is surely intolerable, unconscionable, that the country which was brought into being by the institution whose people they now murder should be allowed to continue to sit there. They are, of course, now responsible for the wounding of 5 United Nations peacekeeping soldiers from Indonesia, from Ireland, from Ghana, and from other places. Netanyahu has demanded that the United Nations force in Lebanon of peacekeeping forces, brave men and women who are there to monitor the ceasefires long non-existent. They are there fulfilling their international duty. Their property and their lives are sacrosanct to the international community. Israel is shooting them, shelling them, and ramming them with tanks. Well, if Gutierrez and the UN put up with this, they'll put up with anything. I'm going to repeat something I asked earlier in the week. If the United Nations cannot find it within itself, given the United States veto, to send under Chapter 11 a force, a fighting force, to keep the peace on the Lebanese border, to protect the civilians on the Lebanese border, to protect their own soldiers on the Lebanese border, then someone else must step forward to do so. After all, that's what Clinton and Tony Blair did in what they call Kosovo, wasn't it? They declared that while the UN would not sanction it, they had a duty. Indeed, they had a right to protect. RTP, they called it. It was founded on the Chicago Doctrine, a doctrine which Blair enunciated eponymously in the city of Chicago. He said that member states of the United Nations, where no consensus could be reached in the UN, had a right to move into other people's countries to protect them from aggression. If there's not a case for doing that right now in southern Lebanon, I have no idea why not. Turkey, which talks big, although in the last hour it said it's setting up a Farsi section of its broadcasting arm, TRT, and we are going to disrupt Iran, said the spokesman for TRT. Well, good luck. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. I'm not against anybody setting up stations. I've done so myself and will do so again. But it is ironic that the tough-talking Turkish President Erdogan is about to set up a TV station to beam into Iran, presumably to foment unrest and discontent there, is still supplying 40% of Israel's war machine's oil across Turkish territory from Turkish satrap Azerbaijan, from Turkey's agent Azerbaijan, about which more later. It's ironic that Turkey is still trading with Israel as it massacres the refugees in the extermination camps of Gaza, yet is preparing to do broadcasting battle with Iran. The slaughter in Gaza has reached unimaginable proportions. It is quite clear that a genocide within a genocide is now taking place. In northern Gaza, the people have a choice to leave or be exterminated. The problem is these people have all left so many times before, and every time they leave, they're killed as they leave. They're killed the place to which they have left, and now they are being killed back in their own hovels in the camps of northern Gaza. And tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of them. There's almost 400,000 people in northern Gaza right now, starving, being shelled, bombed, strafed, and being subject to unremitting, unrelenting assault in the darkness, with absolutely nobody doing anything about it. Nobody even covering the genocide within the genocide that is going on. It appears and I hesitate to use this phrase, that the state of Israel is bent upon a final solution in Gaza. And just like the Western countries that did nothing to stop Hitler's final solution until the Red Army liberated the surviving inmates in the extermination camps of Nazi Germany, the Western countries are again going to turn their faces away. Much more of all of that later.
Sunday evening, and there's one or two things going on. We've got here, how are you? Don't forget, got my Patreon stuff. If you can donate to the channel, that would certainly be a great help. Got some big things planned for the future. All right, let's get going. Let's get started. Let me see if I can start right here. So one of the things that's going on, if you recall, hold on, let me find the darn here we go. Let me find the article. No more German military hardware for Ukraine, according to Bild. Good old Bild. Germany has no more military hardware to offer Ukraine beyond what has already been pledged, even as Kiev remains hard pressed by Russia on the front line, Bild reported on Saturday. According to the outlet, the German Defense Ministry does not believe that Ukraine will be capable of launching an offensive to liberate its own territory, you think. The report also said, citing an internal document, that Berlin would no longer send heavy weapons to Ukraine and that deliveries of this type of aid have been completed. The term applies to tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, blah, 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 blah. In addition, a supposedly new $1.53 billion military aid package, let's see, that Olaf Scholz recently pledged, in fact, refers to commitments promised and paid for last year. Yes, I'm going to give you $153 billion, and you can thank me because I gave that to you last year. We're going to just go in it backwards and just say that $153 billion that I gave you in the past, we'll just call it square, right? So what's happening here? A couple of things. And that is, I think a lot of people are looking at polls. A lot of people are reading the tea leaves, and they're looking at I think there's a lot of that going on in Europe right now. There's a number of factors that they're looking at. Number one, it's fairly obvious that the inevitable defeat of Ukraine is rapidly coming upon us. So I think that, they could play as long as they want to, that Ukraine's going to win, it's going to take back Crimea, blah, blah, blah. But of course, it's just a matter of time before that fiction fell apart, and that fiction is falling apart. And Ukraine's getting smacked around pretty much on the front lines right now. And there are rumors of more Russian offensives. The Russians, as usual, as seems to be their style of military operations, don't seem to be in much of a hurry. They're just going to tear the foundation out from under the Ukrainian military till, I guess, when they get finished, there won't be anything there. So that's going on. You can see what's going on the field. That's part of it. You've got the issue here, which is number one, Trump's looking strong. Let me just say this. Let me go right to, and this is part of the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine discussion. So I guess I might as well go right there. Trump's looking pretty strong. And I tell you what the indicators are. Who knows? There are polls. And as I've said before, when I was in the mainstream media, I talked to people who owned and controlled these polling companies. And basically, in case you didn't know, it goes like this. You take a poll. Let's say whoever's paying you, the Democrats, the Republicans, whoever's paying you, you take a poll for the most part, right? And if the poll doesn't say what you want it to say, you keep taking a poll until it does. So, if there was a poll that said the Democrats were paying for a poll and it said Trump was up by 10 points, you can forget it. That poll would never see the light of day, right? So you've got, the mainstream polls, you've got the polls that people see, right? And then you've got internal polls. You hear them talking about internal polls, and that's what they try to get as accurate as they can. And one of the things we're learning about the internal polling, well, I'll put it like this. How can you tell what the internal polling is saying? Easy. Look at the actions of the parties, of the action of the people who are acting on the polls. So if you look at the Democratic Party right now, they're doing a couple of things. Number one, they're sending Barack Obama out to scold black men. Why would he scold black men and tell them to vote for Kamala Harris? Well, he told us why in his latest rant, where he said, I'm hearing that you guys aren't going to vote for her. Black men aren't going to vote for Kamala in large droves like you did for me. Excuse me for yawning. And we got to do something about that. That's, basically you bunch of sexist scumbags. You don't want a woman and shut up and do what you're told, right? Well, it didn't go over real big, because like a lot of people, black men that aren't voting for Kamala, to be quite frank, it's because they're working class people. And as working class people, they have seen their economic situation significantly deteriorate over the last 4 years. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Trump's going to fix it, but I'm just saying that they're looking back saying, hey, it was better under Trump, so I'd rather go in that direction. I mean, it's a very practical way of looking at politics, and I mean, it's not unreasonable. And so all of the Obama scolding in the world ain't going to bring down the price of freaking eggs. And, you're talking about people who have families to feed, and they're just thinking it from a personal perspective. So my point being, Obama's out there scolding black men for not voting for Kamala, and that tells us that the internal polls are telling us black men ain't voting for Kamala in the kind of numbers they need to win. The Democratic Party also now is going after Jill Stein big time. They are spending millions on advertisements. Let me see if I can do this to go after her. Now, why is that? Let me look at the news and see what it says. They're freaking out. There we go. Here's an indicator that I think you need to look at. You can search this stuff yourself. They're spending millions on an ad. DNC ad says Jill Stein is a spoiler candidate trying to help Trump regain the White House, right? That's what she's trying to do, right? A television ad released Friday by the DNC in battleground states, Michigan, blah, 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 makes the case the campaign of Green Party presidential nominee Jill Stein is a spoiler candidate who seeks to help Republican nominee a return to the White House. Also, we will look at these things are of consequence when it comes to this whole Ukraine thing, to be quite frank, and we'll look at this. Here we go again. We will share screen. All this is related. All this is definitely related to Ukraine. Abandoned Harris Group endorses Jill Stein over pro-genocide candidate Kamala Harris. Group accuses U.S. of backing Israeli project of Palestinian annihilation. Okay, so what are we looking at? How does that get back to Ukraine? Because the European leaders are looking at the same indicators that I'm looking at. They've thrown themselves headfirst into the Ukraine project, and I think they understand that though the Republicans are imperialists and warmongers and American exceptionalists and all that kind of stuff, that ain't their war. That's the Democrats' war. It is not theirs at all. That Trump has really opposed it, not been thrilled with it. That Trump, for whatever reason, I think Trump is a guy who can be very transactional, and he sees politics from a different perspective than the blob, shall we say. Not this is not a defense of Trump. It's just saying he has a different perspective. And I think Trump, when he looks at the European conflict, he's like, what does it cost? What are we making out of it? It's more of a business kind of view. And clearly it ain't his. And the Republican Party, though they are also the party of imperialism and warmongering and all that kind of stuff, however, the voters are moving in the direction of what's being called right-wing populism. I don't care what you call it. All I know is what's going on. So you can use whatever words you want, but clearly the majority of the Republican Party is going with Trump. They like Trump on an I would say they like Trump on a cultural basis. They like Trump on a personal basis. And so I think if Trump was like, yes, I'm 100% behind the Ukraine conflict, that most of his base would be, to be quite frank. But because Trump's like, nah, that ain't mine, that's Biden's, then his base is going to more than likely oppose it. So I think the European leaders are looking at Trump saying things are starting to look like Trump might very well win, and we better be prepared. And so they're preparing themselves to deal with Trump. Now, there is one faction, and you can see that, and it's a weak faction. Well, it is a powerful faction that fears that they will weaken in European politics, and that is the neocons that all want to, double down on everything all the time. And I think they still want to hang on, but I think there are a lot of more practical people in the ruling elite in England who are saying, if Trump wins, we got to deal with the United States, and we got to deal with Trump. And this whole Ukraine conflict, we better be ready to look for an exit ramp. We better be ready to, we better understand that Trump's not motivated to put money into this, and that we don't have the money, and we don't have the military supplies to support it. So we're gonna have to start thinking about how we're going to deal with this. At first, they started thinking about how to Trump-proof it. You saw that discussion going on in Europe, right? How can we make sure that money keeps going there, that weapons keeps going there, that even though Trump comes in, and then I think they're starting to be more realistic, and they're starting to say, you know what? If Trump wins, we don't have the money, we don't have the wherewithal, and Trump's going to abandon us and say, oh, fine, do whatever you want with it, Ukraine, it's yours. See you, bye, have a nice day. Right. So the other part of it is, I think a lot of them are seeing the, multiple natural disasters that have befallen the southern part of the United States, back-to-back hurricanes, and an unbelievable drenching downpour that went through parts of the South and absolutely just wiped stuff out. And a lot of billions are needed. And unfortunately for the Biden administration, that hit at the same time that they were sending like $8 billion for Ukraine, $8 billion for Israel, and like $600 million for Taiwan. So at the same time, people were suffering, saying, how can you help us? They looked up, and Biden had just announced all of this money going overseas. Well, let's just say that didn't go over real well in the United States. Didn't go over real well for obvious reasons. Bottom line, the Israeli ruling elite, they're reading the tea leaves. Trump might win, and it looks, some would argue, probable. I don't know. But Trump's looking strong. The Democrats are getting weaker the closer we get. Harris is not. I mean, come on. If they don't get Muslims, if the Democrats don't get Muslims and black men, they're in deep trouble. And what happens if these Muslims, and now a lot of them are going to vote for Jill Stein, a lot of the Muslims, but you have some of the black men are voting for Trump. I'm not judging it. People can do whatever they want, but you got a lot of black men probably, I think, is voting for Trump for a number of reasons. Okay. So bottom line, they're looking at it saying, how do we get off this train? So as Zelensky starts showing up, he's finding doors slammed in his. I need weapons. They're like, yeah, we're fresh out of weapons, bruh. He's like, I need money. They're like, yeah, we gave that to you last year. We'll give you $1.5 billion last year. Spend that. What happened to that $1.5 billion we gave you last year? You snort that all up your nose, you freaking cokehead? No, sorry, pal. We can't help you. We got things to do. And there was an old song by Public Enemy called "I Can't Do Nothing for You, Man." Right? And the words started off, of course, what's his name? Flavor Flav, and he said, "I can't do nothing for you, man. I'm too busy trying to do for me." Right? Hey, look, man, that's what's happening now. That's what Zelensky's running into. The Germans are like, and the Europeans are getting the heat from their people. It's getting cold. People are like, hey, we need our subsidies for the winter, and they don't have the money to give it to them. And everywhere throughout the U.S. empire, the people are saying to the rulers, I want you to sing that Flavor Flav song. I want you to say, I can't do nothing for you, man. I'm too busy trying to do for me. What's in it for me? So the pressure is really bearing down on the ruling elite to take care of their own, which they don't do. the pressure is really bearing down on the ruling elite to prepare for a likely new administration that is not going to be interested in the Ukraine conflict. That's putting it, that's being charitable. In reality, I think it's personal to Trump. I think Trump is pissed off about Russiagate. I think he's pissed off because he got you know, he got attacked over a phone call about Biden being crooked in Ukraine. All of those things have left a terrible taste in Donald Trump's mouth, and he wants to get off of that the elevator going up to Kiev. And Zelensky being left, as you know, I don't have to tell you, he's between a rock and a hard place. You know, if the Russians, they want to throw him in jail forever, and of course the extremists in Ukraine certainly may do him physical harm if he decides that he wants to negotiate with Russia. So he's in. My prediction is within the next couple of months, Zelensky's getting the hell out of there if he can't alive. He's going to have. I mean, let's face it. Let's be honest about this thing. Practically speaking, that's Zelensky's only move at this point. Zelensky, if he's smart, will be thinking about how to negotiate his way out of this mess. And I mean physically out, not negotiate his country out of this mess, negotiate his ass out of this mess alive. How about we go to and the further the better for him. If he's wise, I think at one point Israel might have been an option. That might not be the safest place either right now. So I think he's probably thinking about going to southern Florida with Juan Guaido, and maybe Juan Guaido teaches democracy at Florida International University. So I think, or Florida Atlantic, one of them, whatever the case, I think that, you know, with all the money he's one good thing though he has, and that, like, with all of the hundreds of millions of dollars that he's stolen from U.S. money, he won't have to work ever again. Him and his wife, she'll be able to buy, you know, multi-million-dollar cars and jewelry, and he'll be able to, you know, wander around in a green olive drab suit and mutter with that weird voice he has. And I guess his move is get out of there alive. So that's that. As far as Ukraine's concerned, it is how do we get out of this, right? That's the leaders of Europe. How do we get out of this? And I mean, even Keir Starmer, the people that wanted to do the long-range strikes, I think they've thrown in the towel. I think they realized that the U.S. is really focused on the Middle East right now, and the U.S. is like, we don't want any extra trouble in Europe because we don't have the wherewithal. We don't have anything. We're over here, man. We're done with that. I mean, they're dealing with the folly of the neocons, where the neocons start wars everywhere, and when this one starts going bad, they're like, yeah, man, that's so less. That was summer of 2024. You know, Ukraine was really summer of 24. Now it's fall. We're moving into winter. We're like Middle East now. We're like, who's Ukraine? Who even does that anymore? That's where they are. They're going to do, as I said years ago, they will soon be exercising the Samsonite option, where they pack their bags and get the hell out of Kiev. And they say to the Europeans, deal with it the best way you can. And the Europeans are going to be dealing with massive refugee problems. There's going to be millions of Ukrainians flooding out of Ukraine, heading out into Western Europe. God bless you, Western Europe. Things ain't going to be pleasant. Meanwhile, if the war in the Middle East expands in an ugly way, there will be tens of millions of Middle Easterners on boats heading over to Europe. They'll be coming from the East. They'll be coming from the West. They'll be coming from everywhere. So Europe, you think you got... Here's the interesting thing about it, and that is that the refugee problem in Europe now is from a combination of many years of colonialism and that kind of stuff, and you know, the overthrowing these countries, taking these countries in, and then saying it's part of the French or British Empire, and then those people were citizens of the French or British Empire, whatever the case may be, and they could come back to their home country, as it were, right? You're dealing with that. Then you destabilize the countries. You're dealing with that. Now, if you've destabilized Eastern Europe, you're looking at a mess coming from there. You're looking at a mess. I think this winter is going to be a freaking mess in Europe of Ukrainians showing up, especially if the war starts to fall apart. But for this reason, I believe that when this thing starts to fall apart, because of the enmity within and the instability within, politically and culturally, within the Ukrainian land itself, that there'll be some kind of a civil war. There'll be fighting there. There will be people who want to say, look, let's go ahead and make a deal with the Russians and let's get this thing over with so we can get back to a normal life. There'll be people saying, no, they are lesser beings and we must continue fighting for the Reich, right? So the extremists, so you're going to, and a lot of arms. So I think at some point you're going to look at some kind of an internal conflict. And of course, what happens there? More people will flee from an internal conflict as it spins down into more destabilization. The only people that will be able to stabilize it at all are the Russians. I have always said, I believe when this conflict ends, the Ukrainians are going to be furious at the Americans and the Brits and the West for getting them into this mess. And they're going to have no alternative but to turn to the Russians and say, help, can you help us out of this mess? And they'll be the only people that can provide food and electricity and heat and all of the things that they need. They won't be able to get it anywhere. And they're going to be furious at the Westerners, and they're going to be well armed. So you're going to deal with some terrorism as a result. But we're getting closer to that. I also think the Russians understand that they don't have to knock all of, and it's kind of interesting. They don't have to knock all of the the Ukrainian electrical infrastructure out. Leave a little bit. And I think it's intentional. If they knocked it all out, everything just falls apart and kind of collapses. And not only that, if you knock it out, think about this. If you're the Russians, if you knock out all of the Ukrainian electricity, all of their infrastructure, and the Ukrainians walk up to you and say, you got me. We don't know what else to do. We can't fight anymore. We don't have electricity. Here, we'll sign off on an unconditional surrender. Okay, but you've knocked out all their infrastructure. Now you got to try to rebuild it. You got to try to, okay, we're sorry. We're trying to work out a deal. We'll sign off on something, but you got to get our electric plants back on because we're all going to freeze to death and die. Well, then if you're the Russians, you kind of got to try to get them back together, right? So I would imagine that the Russians, to some extent, if I'm in charge, if I'm the Russian military, if I'm the Russian political powers, I look at Ukraine and I say, we would like to cripple their electrical grid, but let's look at what we're hitting, so that we cripple the grid by hitting substations, but we don't hit the main power stations. That way, if we have to come in and rebuild and turn this thing on in a hurry, we just rebuild the substations. We don't have to rebuild full power stations, and we can get them up and going again. And I would have a plan right now for getting them up and going, so that if they throw in the towel, put up a white flag, and they say, we want to negotiate, we're out, and we say, yeah, here's what we'll negotiate. Number one, you're going to surrender. Number two, we'll turn your power back on. You surrender, and all of the things that come along with that, you sign right here. But you're in a world of deep and serious trouble. You got no power. Your people are freezing. They're all heading west. We'll turn your power back on. And then I say to the West, look, Ukraine's ready to sign off. Here's what we need to do. One of the things we're going to do, we're willing to do out of the kindness of our own hearts. Now that this war is ending, we're willing, you're going to have to drop sanctions. You're going to have to do this, this, and this. But we're willing to turn the power back on in Ukraine. Because if we don't, you're going to have 10 million Ukrainians flying across that border into your countries. Do you really want that? We can turn the power back on in a matter of, 15, 20 days, 30 days. We'll get most all of their power back on. We already have a plan for it. We already have all of the equipment that we need. We just systematically knock things out, and we know what we knocked out, and we know what we need to turn it back on. So sign up right here on the dotted line. The sanctions are over. This is over. That's over. And we turn it back on. So you give the Europeans a way out too. You give everybody a way out. Always, when you're in conflict, always give your adversary a way out. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, right? Don't box them in. And give them an opportunity to get out with dignity, to get out with feeling like they won something. They got something. Give them something. So if we'll see what happens. But at some point, this Ukraine thing's going to collapse. And I think there's a superpower on Ukraine's border, and that's Russia. And that's going to be the only ones that can bail them out and bail Europe out also, because Europe's on the way down the toilet economically. So the bottom line, that's it with Ukraine. That's where we are right now. The end is near. And the other part of it is this. With the twin hurricanes, with the anger that people have, it's going to be very, very difficult, dare I say impossible at this point, for the U.S. to go back to that well again in Congress, for the U.S. to go back to Congress and say, look, here's the plan. We're going to, we need another 100 million. We need another 80 billion for Ukraine. At a time when, I mean, you can just go on YouTube and just look up Asheville, North Carolina, look up Chimney Rock, North Carolina. I don't know if you've seen that crap, right? It ain't pretty, okay? It is not pretty. Let me see if I can find you something real quick in case you haven't heard, bro. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. I'll find it. Let's see. You know, the problem with YouTube, it's terrible. If you search YouTube, right, the only thing you get, they will only give you like mainstream news. You can't get all of the other stuff that you want to get. You get this crap. Let me see. So let me just give you a little peep at what might be upsetting these people. All right, let's take a look. You know, I mean, you can't. Let me tell you something. That's good. That's the good part. No, that's not the bad stuff. Yeah, that's more like how the bad stuff is, and even far worse than that, right? It is just, it is an absolutely flipping disaster. So, it looks like, just a moonscape all through Florida, particularly Western North Carolina and Tennessee, in that area, a friggin' disaster. So bottom line, I mean, widespread destruction, major thoroughfares, major highways completely wiped off, taken off the side of the mountain. The whole towns just ripped to pieces. Where you're not going to be able to fix it. I saw one thing where all these telephone poles, like it seemed like miles of telephone poles that ran along the road. The roads were gone off the side of the mountain, and the telephones were just balled up. Telephone poles balled up in big piles. How long is it going to take to run those telephone poles when there's no roads? The telephone poles are gone, and the roads that they went alongside are gone. And in a lot of these instances, these roads were on the side of the mountains, and everything's just collapsed. So there's nothing to rebuild a road on. So you have a town that had a road that came to it. The road was on the side of a mountain. There's nothing to rebuild. That town, it's over. The only way to get to that town is through a helicopter, and you ain't rebuilding a road. So that town is dead. The only thing you can do is get those people out of the towns. And this is all over the place. An absolute disaster. So what we have is an instance where a significant part of our country has been completely ripped to shreds. And so it's going to be politically impossible for our Congress to take $100 billion, another 50, 20, even $1 billion, to be honest. People are going to scream their guts out if more money goes to Ukraine. It would be a disaster, particularly leading up to this election and around this election time. So politically, I think this Ukraine thing economically and politically has gone just about as far as it can. And now the neocons have pushed it. And as far as they could, I think this thing falls apart. Bottom line, it falls apart. And the Ukrainians are going to be furious at the people that put them up to this. All right. So there's where we are in Ukraine. I think the situation is pretty clear, and let's move on from there. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover. Oh, third Trump assassination attempt foiled. It's Sunday. There's a assassination attempt on Trump. I'm sure, you know, every few days. So apparently they got some guy who was heading to a Trump rally in California, and he had a shotgun, and he had some multi-round magazine or something, and you know, he lied his way to get his way into a Trump rally. So apparently this guy either planned to do a dirty deed on Trump, or at least he wanted somebody to believe that. So another day, another assassination attempt on Trump. So far, they haven't been so lucky. Also, as I said earlier, things are looking real bleak for the Biden administration. Muslims, that vote's done. Black males, man, they're getting at the end of their rope. And so they're I don't know how they pull this one out, losing some very, very significant demographic groups for the Democratic Party. Keep in mind something too. I think this is important. The Democratic Party, you know, what they would argue is this: Black people vote for us because they're Black and this is their party. Muslims vote for us because they're Muslims and this is their party. Like these groups just do it out of identity politics, right? There are some historical context there. There are people who in those communities who truly believed, and I use a past tense, that the Democratic Party was looking out for the working class and the working poor. They found themselves in the working class and the working poor. They also honestly believed that the Democratic Party was about more diversity, looking out for people of color and women more so than the Republican Party. And those were substantive issues that they believed. And I think that's why they voted for the Democrats. Now that they no longer believe those things, all of the "you should vote for us because she's a woman of color," whatever the hell that means, ain't going to work, because that ain't why they were voting for them in the first place. They were voting for the Democrats because they believed that the Democrats were the party of the working class. Now that they no longer believe that, they vote for them. They probably won't vote for Trump. Now there's some of the Black men are going to be voting for Trump. It'd be interesting to see what those numbers look like. Trump typically outperforms. I would say somebody needs to be ahead of Trump to beat him, because he typically outperforms the polls, simply because, just let's face it, in the Black community, you ask a lot of Black folks who to vote for Trump, they'll be like, "Oh no, vote for Trump. Oh, vote for, get out of here." And then of course, behind closed doors, they vote for Trump, right? So you ain't going to see a lot of people that are going to say, "No, I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris," and then vote for her. The people that are going to vote for Kamala Harris are all like really, really proud. "Yes, we are with her. We're voting for her. Trump's evil, whatever. I'm voting for her." They're very, very proud. But you do have a lot of Trump voters who know they could get heat from friends or family members or people in their social circles. Let's face it, you're in New York, Hollywood, you're going to vote for Trump, and all your liberal friends come up there, you know, and they're like, they pull down their mask and they, you know, say, "Look, who are you voting for?" "Okay, Harris, of course. What are you talking about?" Kamala, everybody's voting for Kamala Harris. What a stupid question. And they're like, "Well, then why do you have that red hat on that says 'Make America Great'?" "Oh, this." No, that's not. It's not a "Make America Great." That's that's a barbecue joint near where I live. It's the Great American Great Again barbecue joint. It's the whole totally different thing. It has nothing to do with Trump. No, I would never vote for Trump. What a crazy thing. So you got a lot of people who are just like, "No, I'm not voting for Trump." When they get in, they're circling a T. Okay, they're going to circle that T, or whatever. You know, facetious here, but you know what I mean. I'll put it like this: they may push a T on the machine, and the machine's going to come up, "Thanks for voting for Kamala Harris." You know, those of us who trust the machines, you know, if you trust those machines, good luck with that. Me, look, I don't make no bones about it. People are like, "Well, Garland, you voting for Trump or Harris?" And I'm like, look, I'm voting for Jill Stein. I feel like, hey, think about this. I'm in a blue state, and so Harris is going to win. If Harris would lose in Maryland, she'll lose every state if she loses Maryland. Number two, which are most states. Most states are either blue or red. So I feel like I want to see third parties get stronger. And so I feel like this is a state that don't matter. Don't get me wrong, matter or not, I never vote for Kamala Harris, okay? I don't care what state I'm in. I'll put it like this. If I were voting and it was the last vote and everybody in America voted and they said, "Garland, if you vote for Kamala Harris, she wins. I'd be like, look, don't even come to me. I'm voting for Jill Stein. Don't want to talk to her. I'm not. That's not my part of the election. I feel like you have to show politicians that there is a price to pay for genocide. I believe that. You're involved in a genocide. I believe you got to show them there's a price to pay. Don't tell me the other guy's worse, potentially worse. There's a price to pay for genocide. And my job, don't hate the messenger, is to make you pay that price so that hopefully in the future you'll look and you'll say, my God, we paid a dear price for genocide. Probably not a good idea to do that again. Now, these people are, genocidal lunatics, so I don't think it's going to really, change their minds, but we'll do what we got to do. Let's go on to Israel. So apparently it hasn't been a good day for Israel. Hezbollah apparently hit some military base with a drone attack today. And my understanding is there are the claims I've heard are anywhere from 4 dead to 7 dead. But you know how the Israelis are. They usually, they fought for the first 4 or 5 months in Gaza and said they lost 2 people. So I'm just saying they probably undercount a little bit. You might want to take that into account. But so the official thing, the last I saw was 67 or 70 casualties. I've seen numbers up to 111, and then they'll say there's 7 dead. Well, I find it hard to believe that you had 111 casualties and only 7 dead. I would suspect that Israel is dramatically undercounting the number of dead, probably the number of casualties. There are claims, don't know if it's true, claims, I'm not going to say it's true whatsoever or false. I'm just saying they're starting to surface online that a guy named Herzi Halavi, who is the IDF chief of staff, there are claims that he might have been injured or killed. At this point, you know how this goes. The Israelis have said they killed some Hamas leader a week or so ago when we found out the guy was still alive. So certainly Hezbollah or whoever the claims are claiming that the IDF chief of staff was killed may or may not be true. I'm just letting you know that rumor is starting to float around so you can continue to watch it. I don't think if it was true, the Israelis would come out and say it. If you remember, when the Israelis first killed Nasrallah, in the immediacy, the Hezbollah and even Iran said, no, he wasn't dead. I guess they decided to wait a couple of days and see how they were going to, or a day or so to determine how they were going to release the information, what position they were going to take. So we don't know if old Herzi Halevi, IDF chief of staff, we don't know if he's alive or not, but if he is, he probably ain't happy because they took a bloody nose. And I knew it was a matter of time, because let's face it, Hezbollah has the ability to hit Israeli bases. They're hitting Israeli bases. And sooner or later, a bunch of Israelis were going to be in a building somewhere, or Americans or somebody were going to be in a building, and a drone was going to come floating in and blow that building sky high. It was just a matter of time before that happened. I don't know if it hasn't already happened, but whatever the case may be, the Israelis have taken a pretty nasty bloody nose on that. We'll see how that turns out. I would expect the Israelis to go on a mad rampage and just bomb a bunch of civilian areas. If somebody asked me, what would your prediction be that the Israelis will do? Well, let's face it, even when they're not taking heavy casualties, they're going on mad rampages, bombing civilian areas and slaughtering civilians. So my guess is they're going to do what they normally do, is they're going to, apparently they've said something to the UN or something like, get your people out of Lebanon. So I would imagine they will target civilian areas and like carpet bomb some civilian areas. And I imagine that Hezbollah will continue to hit their bases. And so that will continue. And it seems to me the Israelis targeting of civilians, generally, it seems to me that is what they do in anger. I may be wrong, but it seems to me like in anger and emotion, they just say, well, we got hit. We can go kill 1,000 civilians in response. It appears that way. That's what it appears. And people are still waiting for Israel's supposed response to Iran. Apparently, the United States has put in these THAAD terminal high altitude air defense systems. Let me see this. THAAD news. Here we go. So now this is of consequence. This is of consequence. All right. U.S. deploying troops to Israel with THAAD. The U.S. will deploy a terminal high-altitude air defense system and military crew to Israel to enhance the country's air defense capabilities. The move comes almost 2 weeks after Iran launched a ballistic missile attack against Israel. Lloyd Austin authorized the deployment of that blah, 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 and an associated crew of U.S. military personnel to Israel to help boost Israel's air defenses following Iran's unprecedented attacks against Israel on April 13th. A THAAD battery consists of 95 soldiers, 6 truck-mounted launchers, 48 interceptors, 8 per launcher. And now keep in mind something. So you got 48 missiles, right? Now here's the thing about that. As a rule, air defense systems send 2 missiles per incoming target. That means that this THAAD system can handle 24 incoming targets. If you recall, Iran, we've heard lots of numbers, but it seems to me at least 100 missiles were launched, and they have said they'll make it significantly higher. I put it like this: if they launch 25, one of them would get through, apparently. So a combination of the fact that Iran's missiles are often hypersonic, which means they can't be shot down by any of the U.S. air defense systems, and the fact that they can use overwhelming numbers of missiles. They can also use high numbers of drones, right? So what they can do, what the Iranians can do is send in 500 drones, 150, 200, 300, whatever number of ballistic missiles, overwhelm that system very, very easily, and hit whatever targets they want. So what that means is this. What that really means is this. I mean, let's be honest about it. You're sending this system with 100 people, 48 interceptor missiles, right? Knowing that the Iranians will likely, if they come in, they're going to fire minimum, let's just say a minimum of 100. And some of those actually kind of do like a starburst. Some of them, when they get near the target, they burst into 8 or 16 different warheads that then go after individual targets at different speeds. So the bottom line is this. You're looking at a couple hundred targets, 48 missiles, 24 targets is all it handles. You know good and damn well that this THAAD system is going to do nothing whatsoever to stop the Iranians from hitting any targets they want, which means, think about this, logically speaking, neither of us, neither you nor I, are military experts, air defense experts, right? Nor are we mathematicians, but we can count to 48 and understand that if you fire 2 missiles per target, that means you can only shoot down 24 targets, and that ain't gonna get it done, right? Considering the fact that the Israelis have their own air defense system, which haven't been very effective, and apparently when the Iranians last attacked Israel, some of those missiles were bear right down on some of the Israeli air defense systems. So they lost some air defense systems then. Now, okay, here gets us to an obvious question. This raises an obvious question. All of us, including Joe Biden and the U.S. military, and all of us know that sending this THAAD system is going to do nothing to defend Israeli airspace from an Iranian attack. So the question has to be, if we know that it doesn't protect Israel, then why are they sending it? I'll give you a couple of possibilities. Speculatory, but I think their deductive logic has to take us in this direction. Number one, kind of for show, right? So you can say to Israel, look, man, we're going to work with you. We got your back. We got you covered. So you can do that for PR purposes, right? Yeah. And people can look, ooh, man, they sent this THAAD system now. The Iranians better watch out now. Maybe bluff the Iranians a little bit, which of course it ain't going to. If you can't even bluff me, and I know nothing about military equipment, God knows you ain't bluffing the Iranians, but you'll bluff the people. people who are watching this thing, right? These civilians that don't know any better, they're going to get bluffed to think you're doing something when you're not really doing anything. They do a lot of PR stuff, so I think that's it. But let's add something else. And this is a cynical reality, I believe, and probably more likely. Look, the Biden people want to get involved in this thing. There's neocons that want to get more involved in military, the military conflict in the Middle East, but they don't know how to do it because they know the American people ain't happy about it and don't want it done, right? So how could they convince the American people to get in? How can they do it? Let me think. If a bunch of American soldiers were killed, perhaps they could say to the American people, hey, doggone it, they killed some Americans. Now we're going to go in and fight. Nobody kills Americans. The eagle's claws are coming out, and we will rake our claws over the evil ones who have killed Americans. Now, I'm cynical. Have you ever heard the term speed bump when it comes to South Korea? That the number of troops that the United States has in South Korea is not enough to do anything to slow the Koreans up, to stop the Koreans from, if the North Koreans wanted to attack South Korea, they would flatten Seoul. And likewise, our troops that are like in the middle of the city of Seoul would be likewise flattened too. And that's the speed bump. You put them there so that the enemy kills them. And once the enemy kills those troops, then you can say, oh, you're going to get it now. And that's like a trigger to allow us to get into a war, right? If you think about it, it's like some of the troops that you put there and say, I'll put my troops there. So if you kill my troops, I'll use that as the speed bump. It'll slow you up a little bit, maybe, but it'll also be a tripwire. So when that goes off, doggone it, I can say, we're going to fight. You're going to get it now. You killed some of my troops. So from a cynical perspective, I do believe that the U.S. government, the Biden administration, is cynically placing American troops in harm's way, hoping that the Iranians will fire missiles, that our troops will all get killed, and they'll have the excuse that they want to enter into conflict in the Middle East with at least some help, push, some American people saying American troops have died, now we got to fight, right? Which would mean, if you think about that, I don't know that it's true, but I'm speculating. But if that is true, then you ain't got much value on the lives of American troops. If that is true, and I don't think it's, looking at what the neocons have done, I don't think it's crazy to think that, I mean, recently there's these islands called the Kimono Islands. They are 2 kilometers from the Chinese mainland. The U.S. put military guys there. 2 kilometers. Can you imagine that? You could swim. I could row there. I could, if my boat ran out of gas, I could paddle, to 2 kilometers there. So, I mean, a small couple groups are there. The Chinese could have just said, oh, to hell with that, and killed them all. I mean, there's nothing you can do to defend them. They're not there to be defended. They're there as a tripwire. So somebody kills your troops, and then you say, you're going to get it now. You killed my troops. And then you say to the American people, well, we got to go to war. They killed some of our troops. How cynical is that? I'm just saying, if you're in American military, you might well get the hell out and run, because they don't think much of your life. And by the way, I might add, the people entering the U.S. military right now, the numbers are dramatically decreasing. Let's face it, people ain't stupid. And as Clint Eastwood said in The Outlaw Joe, they know something. Dying ain't no way to make a living, boy, right? People they join the military to see the world, which is, if you think about that, that tells you you're an empire. If you join the military to travel the world, you should be able to travel the world if you join your own military. But if you're an empire, you can. But if you're a tripwire force, probably not a good idea to join the military. That's called suicide. And that means that your government sees you as an expendable. I mean, if this is true, which is possibly, that means that they see the troops as an expendable asset. How cynical. The troops, your own troops, are an expendable asset. I think it's true. There's maybe people in the in the chat that disagrees with me, or that Somebody says Garland's an MJ fan. Betcha. Was that Michael Jordan? Oh yeah, I was a big Michael Jordan fan. Are you kidding me? Yes, I was a big. If you're talking about Michael Jordan, I don't know. Maybe you're talking about Michael Jackson. I don't know the moonwalk, but I did like his music back in the day. I got to tell you, he may have been nuts, but his music was pretty incredible stuff. Really, really, really incredible stuff. Anyway, what are we doing? Let's move on. Let's not get back to 80s music, right? Till Tuesday and Duran Duran and all that good stuff. 80s was great. Sting, how about that? Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Come on, Anyway, I digress. So right now, Israel has got the living snot smacked out of them by Hezbollah. I think they're threatening to do something really mean to civilians. They apparently are still talking with the U.S. about what they what they're going to do to Iran, how they're going to strike, how they're going to attack Iran. I think that they understand that this is a big gamble. That if I've been saying that if you watch any of one of the things that's not talked about by a lot of people, but I've been bringing it up, and that is, look, man, if I say I'm gonna kick your butt, not come over your house, and I take a swipe at you and I lose the fight, I'd be better off not to fight than to take a swipe at you and lose the fight, right? Be far better not to fight than to go brag of how you're going to get it and I'm going to kick your butt and I come over there and lose the fight. And so the Israelis have been bragging about how they're going to kick Iran's butt and they're going to attack, and the U.S. will help them. Man, what happens if you go in there and you get all your stuff shot down? Missiles shot down, planes shot down. You go after, it could go bad. They may very well go after Iran, and it may go bad. So Israel could be contemplating the outcome, the repercussions of attacking Iran. Because the other thing is, if Iran shuts off their electricity, how do they continue to prosecute their war? And what are they going to do when every damn body in Israel will say, I'm out of here, I'm going to Cyprus, I'm going wherever the hell, I'm getting out of here. We got no electricity. Not a fun place to live. So that's the jam that the Israelis find themselves in. One more thing I gotta say. And I think that's where we are. I think that's where we are right now. We're waiting to see Israel, and here's also the jam that Israelis find themselves in. So now they gotta get revenge on two people, because the Israelis kind of thing, as the U.S. rules-based order, you can't touch me. If you do, I gotta smack you down, right? So the Iranians have, boom, gave them a bloody nose. And they're like, we're going to get the Iranians back. Ooh, now you're in trouble, Iran. You're going to get it. You got it coming. Hezbollah gives them a bloody nose. Hey, now it's your boy, Hezbollah. I wouldn't want to be you. Now you're going to get it. The problem they have is they're surrounded. You've got the Iraqis. You got Yemen. Not long ago, Yemen gave them a bloody nose. So what do? They get a bloody nose from Iran, and they go hit Iran. Their noses, it ain't going to get less bloody. Let me tell you, if they hit Iran, bloodier noses. What are they going to do? They can go bomb Beirut and kill. Here's the reality. Even if they go bomb Beirut and they kill a bunch of civilians, the only thing you're going to do is stir a hornet's nest up. They're going to be even more pissed than Hezbollah. They're going to hit more of your bases, and you're going to hit more. So the only thing that Israel can do, they're like swinging wildly in all directions. They're just hands flailing in all directions, just wild flailing at everybody around them because they're around it. The bottom line is, it is to some extent a civilizational war. The Muslim world, the Muslim civilization, the civilization of people who believe in Islam, that's their way of life, feel that they are being put upon by the U.S. empire, that you are the cat's paw for the U.S. empire, and I tend to agree with them, and that they're going to get theirs. I think they're like this, really. I think whether it's Hezbollah, the whole resistance forces, I think their thing is, you're going to get some punches in, fair enough. Big punches in, that you can do, but you're going to get some pain too. And we'll see. But oftentimes, look, a fight comes down to who can take the punches the most. People fight and swing, and at the end, two people are bloody, but one guy can take punches better than the other. And if you get in a fight with a guy who can take the pain better than you, and it's a fairly even fight, that means you lose, because at some point you don't want to take any more pain. And if this thing keeps going, wherein Israel keeps getting these kind of bloody noses, and I think they'll increase. At some point they lose, but they can't lose, but they're going to lose. Same with Ukraine. They can't lose, but they're going to lose. They put everything into this. You know, let me end by saying this about Ukraine. When you get down to it, the biggest problem that NATO is going to have, and part of it also is going to be if they attack Iran, and Iran has Russian defenses that are very, very effective against NATO equipment. It's going to be hard to convince the NATO people that Israel using NATO equipment attacked Iran using military equipment, and Iran was successfully repelled it. That Iran attacked Israel using their non-NATO equipment. Israel tried to defend themselves using NATO equipment, and they were unable to do it. So at this point, what we're starting to see is that the effectiveness of NATO equipment, of Western US equipment versus other stuff, it's not all that great.
That's a fact.
So now it's not just a matter of NATO, of do you have the numbers of air defense systems? Do you have the supply, the numerical military supplies that are necessary to defend or attack or whatever when it comes to Russia, China, whoever? It's, do you have equipment that's effective? And it's becoming increasingly clear that it's not effective. And if they go after Iran and Iran repels an attack successfully, well, that's a real bad news. That would be the worst thing, man. Y'all remember what I'm saying? Keep in mind, this is an important discussion. The worst thing that could happen for NATO and its people is that they could attack Iran with NATO equipment, and it could get easily repelled, even mostly repelled, whatever, you know, and it's not successful. Man, that's going to have a big, there will be great consequences for that. And of course, at the end of the Ukraine conflict, when they've been telling everybody in Europe that if the Russians win in Ukraine, they're going to they won't stop till they get to the English Channel, and the Russians say, we got no desire to fight anybody outside of Ukraine, get out of here with that, then the credibility of the propaganda arms of NATO will be in great question. All right, let's see. We always get good questions with super chats.
Something huge is about to happen, and United States dominance is on the line right now. While most of the United States is focused on our election just 23 days away, something huge is happening where the global world order is being rearranged right before our eyes right now, and Washington, D.C. is desperately trying to hold on to power. There is a global war that is quietly happening that they don't want you to know about. Guys, this is as big as it gets for world power and U.S. dollar dominance and the failure of this Biden administration. So you better pay attention to what's happening. So there are a number of huge news developments that we need to cover today, which have massive implications for Western powers. And I'm going to show you something very troubling that NATO just did, which no mainstream media are covering, by the way. It's very concerning. But first, let's start with what's happening in Russia in just 9 days from now, a global showdown that is unprecedented in its scale and its implications. A titanic struggle is about to unfold between NATO and the BRICS nations. The timing, by the way, is set on purpose right before the United States election. It's a clear message from Putin and China that American dominance is coming to an end. This clash will officially kick off at the eagerly anticipated BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, on October 22nd. Now, while the mainstream media might be busy pushing distractions, we are here to break down what's going on right now, what's truly at stake, a global battle over resources, the unraveling of the U.S. dollar's dominance, the sort of fighting to hang on from NATO, and the potential shift for a seismic shift in global power dynamics right now. Now, you might be asking, why all the fuss about this summit? This isn't just any summit. This is the equivalent right now of the Bretton Woods Conference after World War II, which gave American dollar reserve currency status around the world. This BRICS summit represents the death of the Bretton Woods Conference and the end of U.S. dollar dominance. Donald Trump said this is going to be worse than losing a war.
Our country's going to hell And we're not going to be the big bar. We have power, but it's waning. In fact, it's waning in terms of our currency. And I'm not just talking about the value of our currency. I'm talking about our currency being used throughout the world.
You want it to remain. You want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency.
Well, I think it's bigger than losing any war.
And Trump is right. Under President Biden and Kamala Harris, the BRICS nations have massively accelerated their size and scope. On October 22nd, the BRICS countries, comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as its leaders, now expanding to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. It now represents a staggering 35.6% of global GDP by purchasing power parity and 45% of the world's population. Iran has joined BRICS. At the same time, nutjobs in Washington, D.C. want to go to war with Iran to help Israel.
I've been saying for 6 months now, hit Iran. They have oil fields out in the open. They have the Revolutionary Guard headquarters you can see from space. Blow it off the map.
You see how this is lining up? Russia and China backing Iran? How do you think this is going to go? This grouping is now a significant counterbalance to Western economic and geopolitical hegemony, strength in numbers. But where does the real power come from? It comes from the resources. And that's exactly what this conference is all about. Putin is now setting his sights on resource-rich regions around the world, from the lithium plains of South America to uranium fields in Africa. And of course, the ever-vital oil and gas reserves. Energy resources are at the heart of this brewing conflict right now, but no one's really talking about it. The United States right now is set to double its electricity usage because of AI. And guess what? We get almost all of our uranium from Russia, all of our enriched uranium from Russia. What happens when Putin stops sending any to us? Game over. As you know, the surge for lithium, copper, and other critical minerals right now is really what's driving this covert global war. Now imagine if the BRICS nations cornered these markets. Western supply chains, especially those in tech and renewable energies, could face cataclysmic disruptions. We heard right from Senator Lindsey Graham's own mouth that the reason we're even in Ukraine is because of all of the minerals there.
They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. We can win this. They need our help.
That's right. We're literally stealing their minerals. So the United States and NATO allies might find themselves scrambling to secure lesser alternative sources as the energy balance tilts towards BRICS. And of course, we now have confirmation that Hurricane Helene that struck western North Carolina struck an area with massive lithium deposits. Lithium that the United States government desperately needs. It was right under their feet. It is very curious how a hurricane struck in that exact location. So the U.S. government has the perfect opportunity for a land grab now in western North Carolina. Now, resources are one thing. Now let's talk about currency. With the BRICS summit only days away, there's more than just mere speculation that they're about to launch a new currency backed by gold. This new currency will aim to remove the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of the world. As economist and gold expert Peter Schiff just said, this is the fault of the Biden administration, putting severe sanctions on Russia that drove them to do this.
Peter, how about it? I don't see anything good of the BRICS nations coming together and strategizing, as they say, to pretty much take over the world and screw over the West, which is us. Yeah. I'm a little concerned. Well, shouldn't we be worried?
Oh, we should be. First of all, they supply us with a lot of goods, but they also have loaned us a lot of money. The United States really depends on the dollar as the reserve currency. But what we did with those sanctions, we gave the world a powerful reason not to want to be a part of that system anymore.
So Schiff is right. We are feeling these monstrous effects on American soil. The effects of these shifts are palpable. For instance, we're witnessing a surge in core producer price inflation this week. As Zero Hedge reports, even as energy prices temporarily sag, the food and services costs continue to climb. Americans are feeling these pressures acutely. I'm sure you are, right at the gas pump, at the grocery store, with heating bills. How many of you are experiencing the doubling of your grocery bills right now? Let me know down below. Americans are restless. They're sick of this. I'm sick of it. So to understand the full magnitude of what's upcoming, you need to understand how these globalist policies have eroded domestic economic foundations. We've outsourced critical minerals and industries thanks to liberal policies. We've weakened the American workers' competitive edge around the world, and we've offshored all of it. President Trump called this out. He said we must stop globalization.
If you want freedom, take pride in your country. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists.
Perhaps that's why they tried to assassinate him when he wants to stop the globalist agenda. The deep state military actively wants a war with these countries in order to retain US dollar dominance. Trump wants to build up America's manufacturing at home, build up our own infrastructure at home. So as the BRICS summit approaches, NATO is trying to flex its muscles. And this week, NATO did something that no one really covered because of the twin hurricanes that were hitting the United States. Yes, NATO is running nuclear preparedness drills, preparing for a nuclear war against Russia. But they said, don't worry, we're not using live warheads. Oh, good. But they're planning for a nuclear war, tabletop exercises on how they would deploy troops across Europe in order to invade and attack Russia, and how we would respond to a nuclear war. This is the reality we're living in right now, folks. The world is changing right before our eyes, and Trump might be our only hope to stop this madness. So that's the news update part of today's video.
Salute.
Says the West stands to lose assets worth at least $288 billion if frozen Russian assets. Well, according to the RIA, the top investors in the Russian economy include Cyprus with more than $98 billion, the Netherlands with $50 billion, and the UK with nearly $19 billion. It also reports that Germany has $17 billion invested, France $16 billion, and Italy almost $13 billion.
In a shocking turn of events, Russia has just frozen billions of dollars worth of European Union assets. This bold move, executed in October 2024, marks a significant escalation in the ongoing economic conflict between Russia and the West. While the exact amount hasn't been disclosed, it's likely in the tens of billions, based on the scale of EU asset freezes against Russia in recent years. Subscribe to GeoFlux to find the latest updates about global economy and finances. Now, you might be wondering, why is this happening? Well, it's all part of a tit-for-tat strategy. Russia's action is seen as retaliation for the EU's ongoing sanctions and asset freezes against Russia, which have been in place since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. To put this into perspective, the EU had frozen around $300 billion in Russian assets as of 2022. That's a staggering amount, and it's been a thorn in Russia's side for years. Let's break down what's actually been frozen. The assets of major EU banks operating in Russia have been targeted, with Austrian, German, and French banks bearing the brunt of this financial assault. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It represents a major escalation in the financial warfare between Russia and the West. And here's something to keep in mind. There are growing concerns about whether US assets could be next on Russia's hit list. So what's driving Russia to take such drastic measures? Well, there are a few key motivations at play here. First and foremost, it's a clear act of retaliation. The Western sanctions have crippled the Russian economy, and this move is Russia's way of saying, we've had enough. But it's more than just revenge. Russia is also trying to gain leverage against the EU, hoping to force them back to the negotiating table on sanctions. It's a high-stakes game of economic chess, and Russia just made a bold move. But there's another angle to consider. This freezing of assets isn't just aimed at the EU. It's also a warning shot to the US and other Western nations who have frozen Russian assets. It's as if Russia is saying, look what we can do. You're not the only ones with financial power. Now let's talk about the impact and implications of this move, because they're significant. First off, it's a major blow to the affected EU banks and businesses operating in Russia. These companies are now caught in the crossfire of this economic war, and the consequences could be severe. We're talking about potential job losses, financial instability, and a whole host of other problems. But the ripple effects go far beyond just these companies. This move could lead to further escalation in sanctions and asset freezes on both sides. It's like a game of economic ping pong, with each side hitting back harder and harder. And with each volley, the economic uncertainty and geopolitical tensions between Russia and the West increase. Here's something else to consider: the potential for US assets to be targeted next. If Russia decides to go down that road, we'd be looking at a dramatic escalation of this conflict. The US has significant economic interests in Russia, and any move against those would likely provoke a strong response from Washington. Now, in the midst of all this financial turmoil, the EU has made a bold move of its own. In September 2024, just before Russia's asset freeze, the EU announced a $30 $2.5 billion loan to Ukraine. But here's the kicker. They're using frozen Russian assets as collateral. It's a groundbreaking initiative, essentially making Russia pay for Ukraine's reconstruction and support its budget during the ongoing war. Let's break this down a bit. The profits generated from these frozen assets are estimated at $2.53 billion per year. That's not chump change, and it's going to be used to service this loan. The EU is billing this as a way to provide much-needed fiscal space for Ukraine to fund defense, healthcare, energy repairs, and other critical needs. But here's where it gets really interesting. This move by the EU is essentially doubling down on its support for Ukraine, despite Russian financial retaliation. It's a clear message. We're not backing down, no matter what you do. And it's this kind of resolve that's shaping the current geopolitical landscape. Of course, this loan plan isn't without its obstacles and risks. One of the biggest potential hurdles is Hungary. As an EU member state, Hungary has the power to veto the extension of asset freezes, which could jeopardize the loan repayment plan. It's a reminder that even within the EU, there are differing opinions and agendas when it comes to dealing with Russia. But here's an interesting legal wrinkle. Even if Hungary does veto the asset freeze extension, the loan can still proceed. It's a testament to the EU's determination to support Ukraine, no matter what obstacles are thrown in their path. Now, as you might expect, Russia is far from thrilled about this plan. They've strongly objected to the use of their assets and have warned of a painful response. And that's where the asset freeze comes in. It could be the first step in a series of retaliatory measures, with more to come. It's a high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship, and the stakes keep getting higher. But it's not just about the money. This conflict is also about the principles at stake. For the EU, supporting Ukraine is about standing up for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the right of nations to choose their own path. For Russia, it's about asserting their own power and influence, and pushing back against what they see as Western encroachment. So, where do we go from here? Well, much depends on the EU's resolve in maintaining pressure on Russia via sanctions and support for Ukraine. Will they stay the course, even in the face of Russian retaliation? Will they find ways to navigate the legal and political obstacles that stand in their way? And what about Russia? How far are they willing to go in this economic war? Will they continue to target EU assets, or will they escalate even further, perhaps even targeting US interests? These are the questions that will shape the geopolitical landscape in the months and years to come. But one thing is clear. The economic war between Russia and the West has reached a precarious new stage. With billions of dollars in assets caught in the crossfire, the stakes have never been higher. It's a conflict that's being waged not with tanks and missiles, but with banks and balance sheets. And it's a conflict that has implications far beyond just Russia and the EU. It's about the future of the global economic order, about the balance of power between East and West, and about the principles that will guide international relations in the 21st century. So, as we watch this conflict unfold, it's important to keep the bigger picture in mind. Yes, the asset freezes and loan plans are significant in their own right, but they're also part of a much larger struggle, one that will shape the world we live in for generations to come. Now let's take a step back and look at some of the broader geopolitical implications of this conflict. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about Russia and the EU. It has the potential to reshape the global economic landscape in profound ways. First, there's the risk of further escalation. If Russia decides to target US assets, it would mark a dramatic escalation of this economic warfare. The US has been a key player in the sanctions regime against Russia, and any move against US interests would likely provoke a strong response from Washington. But even if the US isn't directly targeted, the conflict between Russia and the EU has the potential to spill over into other areas. We could see increased volatility in global financial markets. As investors grapple with the uncertainty created by this economic brinkmanship, we could see shifts in currency preferences and reserve holdings, as countries seek to insulate themselves from the fallout. And then there are the broader implications for European security. This conflict has already strengthened the resolve of NATO and other Western allies, who see Russia's actions as a threat to the post-World War II international order. But it's also sparked debates about how far the West should go in supporting Ukraine, and what the endgame of this conflict should be. These are complex issues, with no easy answers. But one thing is clear. The economic war between Russia and the West is not just about money. It's about power, principles, and the future of the international order. So, what could the future hold? Well, there are a few potential scenarios to consider. One possibility is a negotiated de-escalation. This would likely require concessions from both sides, perhaps in the form of sanctions relief from the West in exchange for a pullback of Russian forces from Ukraine. But getting to that point would require skilled diplomacy and a willingness to compromise, both of which have been in short supply in recent years. Another possibility is further escalation. If Russia continues to target EU assets, or if they expand their economic warfare to other sectors, it could lead to a tit-for-tat cycle of retaliation that would be difficult to break. We could see the development of parallel financial systems as countries seek to insulate themselves from the risks of a globalized economy. And then there's the potential for long-term economic realignment. This conflict could accelerate the trend towards de-dollarization as countries seek to reduce their dependence on the US-led financial system. It could lead to the development of new economic blocs as countries seek to align themselves with like-minded partners. These are all possibilities, not certainties, but they underscore the high stakes of this conflict and the potential for it to reshape the global economic order in profound ways. Now, I want to touch on a few related topics that are important to consider in the context of this conflict. First, there's the issue of cryptocurrency and sanctions evasion. As the sanctions against Russia have tightened, there's been growing concern about the use of digital assets to circumvent these restrictions. It's a complex issue with no easy solutions. On one hand, cryptocurrencies offer a degree of anonymity and decentralization that could make them attractive to those seeking to evade sanctions. And there's evidence to suggest that Russia has been exploring the use of digital assets as a way to mitigate the impact of Western sanctions. But on the other hand, the cryptocurrency market is still relatively small and illiquid compared to traditional financial markets. And there are efforts underway by the international community to close the loopholes that could allow for sanctions evasion through digital assets. It's an issue that will likely continue to evolve as the conflict between Russia and the West plays out. But it's one that policymakers and financial regulators will need to watch closely, as the stakes are high. Another related topic is energy security in Europe. The conflict with Russia has underscored Europe's dependence on Russian oil and gas, and has sparked a renewed push for energy diversification. We're seeing efforts to accelerate the development of renewable energy sources, as well as to find alternative suppliers of fossil fuels. But this is a complex and long-term challenge. Europe's energy infrastructure is deeply intertwined with Russia, and untangling those ties will take time and significant investment. And there are geopolitical considerations at play as well, as countries seek to balance their energy needs with their strategic interests. It's an issue that will have significant implications for the future of Europe's economy and security. And it's one that will likely continue to shape the contours of the conflict with Russia in the years to come. Finally, I want to touch on the role of China in this conflict. China has been walking a tightrope when it comes to Russia and the West, seeking to maintain its economic ties with both sides while avoiding getting drawn into the conflict directly. But as the economic warfare between Russia and the West escalates, China's balancing act is becoming increasingly difficult. There are signs that China may be leaning towards increased economic cooperation with Russia as a way to offset the impact of Western sanctions. But this is a risky strategy for China. They have significant economic interests in the West, and any move to align too closely with Russia could jeopardize those ties. It's a delicate balance, and one that will require careful diplomacy and strategic thinking from Chinese leaders. At the same time, we can't ignore the humanitarian impact of these sanctions. While the sanctions are intended to target the Russian government and key individuals, they also have ripple effects on the broader Russian population. There are concerns about the availability of essential goods and services, and the potential for economic hardship to exacerbate existing social and political tensions within Russia. It's a reminder that economic warfare, like any form of conflict, has real human costs.
The foreign affairs, really the mouthpiece of the CIA, concludes is that if Israel is going to come out of this, it is going to have to resolve each front separately, and it's going to have to resolve each front separately with diplomacy. So all of this bluster in the article, oh, well, Israel, of course, needs to defeat Hamas. Of course, it needs to wage war against Hezbollah. It defends Israel to the teeth, and then concludes that only diplomacy on each of these fronts can give Israel and, of course, the United States, as big as allies, the time necessary to actually confront this. This, to me, seems to be a huge admission, Professor Morandi, of Israel's perilous situation. What do you make of this multi-front war that Israel, of resistance that Israel is currently facing? And, perhaps you can comment on all these fronts in a bit more detail.
Well, if you recall earlier, I was saying how the United States and the Europeans, because they're the ones who are actually carrying out the war. Israel on its own can do nothing. If the Americans stop and the Europeans stop assisting the Israeli regime and stop providing them with the weapons and the ammunition and the financial assistance and the political cover to continue with this Holocaust, it would be over in a week. The regime would collapse. So this is a Western Holocaust. This is a Western genocide, the collective West, meaning the regimes, not the people. They are behind this. This is a war that the West is carrying out. Otherwise, the Israeli regime has shown itself to be weak and puny and incapable of continuing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have all these planes coming in day and night with American weapons. They wouldn't have all this financial. Americans are not selling them weapons. They're gifting them. They're giving these as gifts. And so they're Germans and the Europeans. So the Israelis have lost the war. They've lost it a long time ago. But if you recall, I was saying that the Americans and the Europeans are willing to give Hezbollah the world. Why? Because they want to cut down the number of fronts. They want to decrease the number of fronts. And this, I think, shows how heroic Hezbollah and the resistance and its supporters are in Lebanon. Not only are they being abused by the fascists in Lebanon who supported the Israeli invasion in 1982 and who continue to be traitors to the country, but the West is offering them everything that they would ever, they could never dream of getting the sort of concessions that they're being offered. All they have to do is just say, yes, we'll step back. But they won't do that because they're principled. So in certain ways, what they're doing is even more heroic in the sense that they are not willing to take concessions. They are willingly making sacrifices. I think that's something that history will remember. What Hezbollah and its supporters did. Every woman and child and man in Lebanon that's supporting, whether Christian, whether Sunni or Druze or Shia, or Palestinian or Lebanese, whoever is supporting the resistance in Lebanon, they're all a part of this. They're all heroes. The same is true in Yemen. The Americans are willing to give the Yemeni government, Ansarullah, everything that it wants. But they won't accept it. They say, no, the genocide, the Holocaust has to end. And of course, imagine if Syria was to change its policy. Imagine if Syria said, okay, no, you think the Americans would solve their problems. And of course, first and foremost is Iran. None of the members, none of the parties, none of the components of the axis of resistance will take one step back. The Holocaust, the genocide must end. Apartheid must end. And history will remember. Remember, for years, for decades, the West has always been talking to us about human rights and human values and freedom and democracy. But I think Gaza has proven everything. And I think all those people who've had many questions about Iran, and I'm not saying Iran is a utopia or Lebanon is a utopia or Syria is a utopia, but in the case of Iran, more specifically, for over 40 years, people have been hearing only nasty and negative things about Iran and how horrible Iran is. But I think everyone has to rethink Iran. Because let's look at Gaza. The West is supporting the genocide. Iran is standing up against genocide. Iran is making sacrifices, and Iran is unwilling to do a deal. Unwilling. That's why we have maximum pressure sanctions. That's why and don't think it's Israel that's carrying out attacks against Iran. All the Western intelligence agencies, the Five Eyes, including New Zealand, the Five Eyes and Western governments, all of them are working together to gather intelligence against Iran. They're all working together against Iran for the sake of the Israeli regime. So Iran could imagine what concessions Iran could get, but Iran won't take them because this is there's a principle here. The Palestinian people are human beings. We cannot turn away. We cannot ignore what's going on in Palestine. So Iran will continue with the resistance. All these fronts will continue to remain active, and the Israeli regime will have to pay the ultimate price, and that is ending ethno-supremacism and apartheid. That is the only way to end this. There's no other way. There's no other way that the Israeli regime can continue. Israel will never be like it was before October the 7th. That Israel is gone. And it's only going to go further downhill as we move forward. So the crazy fanatics aside, those who are more pragmatic in Israel should start rethinking. Those who just want a better life should leave. Those who are pragmatic should rethink, like the leaders in South Africa did, and look at the reality on the ground. And when that happens, those fanatics will not be enough in number to be able to sustain the regime.
I think those are excellent points, especially about your analysis of Hezbollah in particular, but really the entirety of the resistance. Surely the Americans, the United States, would love to negotiate some kind of pause. That's exactly what this Council on Foreign Relations article, the Foreign Affairs, that's what it's kind of saying is.
And that's what they've been doing. They've been trying to persuade Hezbollah or Syria or Yemen and Iran and others to shift away from the resistance. And they're willing to give a great deal, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and not only is that going to happen, but it is being pushed as if some kind of long war situation, maybe a lesser kinetic conflict for Israel, is actually in its best interest. But on the same front, the U.S. will acknowledge that Israel's own capabilities are surely unable to absorb the stress of having to fight at any level on this number of fronts. But that's seemingly where this is going. Professor Marty, where do you see this future for Israel and this conflict generally? Because what I see is, as you said, all of these fronts are going to continue, but that is not sustainable in the least. So something has got to give.
Well, it doesn't matter who is in the White House. The United States is declining. Relatively speaking, it's on the decline. It has huge internal problems, economic problems, and it is isolated across the world. Europe is in far worse shape than the United States. And these are the regimes that sustain Israel. So as these regimes go downhill, and remember, it's not just Gaza, it's China, it's Ukraine, it's, they're facing, and it's countries across the global south that are moving closer to each other, BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, other regional organizations. They are going to gradually, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but gradually they're going to become closer. They're going to find means to do trade and business without the West being able to interfere. It may take time, but it's happening. And the Americans are pushing the world in that direction. So the Americans in the West are going to decline. Where does the Israeli regime get its support? It gets it from the West. It's a weak and vulnerable and small regime, as we were discussing earlier. without the West, they cannot continue this war for a week. It would be over. So it doesn't matter if Trump's in the White House or Harris is in the White House. The reality on the ground is that the Israeli regime and its Western backers are on the decline, and that the world despises this regime. Even in the United States, you see people on the right and the left, how they're making they're being removed from YouTube, regardless of what we may think about the politics of different people. But they attack the Israeli regime for what it's doing, and they're being removed. All of this is exposing the West more and more than ever before. It's showing how brutal and barbaric these regimes are. It shows how fundamentally hostile they are towards human rights. It shows that the liberals in the United States are as fascistic as any other fascist group in human history, because they're supporting this genocide. They're behind the genocide. They're with the genocide, whether it's Christian Zionists or liberals in the United States. But the population in the United States is turning against it, whether Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or anyone else, people from all walks of life. And that's what's happening across the world. So the Israeli regime doesn't have a future. And that we see no sign of a ceasefire. The longer the war continues, the worse it is for the Israeli regime, because they have the most to lose. Lebanon, people die, it hurts the economy, but the Israeli economy is being devastated. They had a much larger economy. In Yemen, people die, people suffer, but the economy in Yemen has already been destroyed and devastated. So Israel, the Israeli regime, loses more than anyone else. So and then if the regime expands the war, it only makes it worse for itself. It cannot escape defeat. So the longer this goes, the more diminished the regime becomes. And the longer this goes, the weaker its backers are, because the war in Ukraine is not going well. The confrontation with China is not going well. The confrontation with the global South is not going well, hence BRICS and other regional organizations. So it's not looking good for the West, and it's definitely not looking good at all for the Israeli regime. And I think Israelis, should start leaving. The Zionists should start leaving. It's not going to end well for the regime. Or of course, those Jews who are opposed to Zionism in Israel, hopefully they will be able to convince more people to turn away from this cult. But the Zionists should leave, because Israel is never going to be what it was before.
Yeah, and maybe to close on this point of Israel, because I do want to talk about this multipolar world that you mentioned. But I wanted to read this interesting quote to conclude the article I was referencing in Foreign Affairs about the coming long war. It says, to win a long-term intensive multi-front war, Israel would have to increase defense budgets, open new lines of productions for munitions, harden its critical national infrastructure, and expand its pool of recruitment to additional parts of Israeli society. And then it makes a point about the most critical front being the home front. And I wanted your final comment on this, because a lot is made about Israel's own internal divisions. But how do you see all of this relating to this broader crisis of legitimacy that you speak of, and the dangers of its future? Because oftentimes it seems like this internal division focuses far more on the perhaps the effectiveness of the Israeli regime in committing all of this destruction, rather than actually ending the destructive and genocidal policy itself. What have you made of Israelis' internal divisions?
Well, when this is a manufactured country, this is not a real country. People come from across the world, and that the divisions inside occupied Palestine are very deep. But as you know, the people who protest against Netanyahu, they're not pro-Palestinian. They are Zionists and they're ethnic supremacists, and most of them support the genocide. There are Jews in Israel who are deeply opposed to Zionism and who are opposed to all of this. We always have to keep that in mind, but they're a small minority. at least for now. But what the article ignores or pretends to ignore is that these divisions are huge, and they are going to become more problematic as the regime declines. And the regime will continue to decline. As I said, every day that the war continues, it will decline. They will kill Palestinians. They will slaughter women and children, and they will call that a success because they're racist. And the West will be silent about it. The BBC, CNN, Fox News, left and right, they'll all, well, there are no left and right, but they'll all be silent, or they'll all try to justify that what the Israeli regime does as much as possible. It will continue. But the regime is declining. And so as it declines, these divisions become more dangerous, without a doubt. But what this article ignores, and I think it chooses to ignore, is that the Israeli regime is not fighting this war on its own. The West is carrying out this genocide. The West is funding this genocide. The regime is completely reliant on Western armaments to bomb women and children, on Western ammunition, on Western financial assistance, and Western political cover. Remember, if in Iran, if a single person allegedly dies because of police brutality, which, as I said, there was never any evidence of that happening, the West mobilized against Iran, sanctions after sanctions. It was never about Iranian women or Iran human rights. It was about destroying the resistance. In Israel, they carry out genocide. Where are the sanctions? There are no sanctions. They will assist the genocide. They're giving them armaments. They're giving them ammunition. They're giving them political cover. The Western media is collectively helping the Israeli regime as much as possible. They've exposed themselves. This is not the free world. This is not democracy. This is not. They're shutting people down on YouTube, the electronic intifada. They, even people from the right, Candace Owens. You may not agree with different people on different issues, but the point is that they're exposing themselves to their own people and to the world. So this is not the regime is completely dependent, and the West, by assisting the regime, is weakening itself because it's exposing itself to the world. But in any case, the article is total nonsense. The Israeli regime is not fighting a war. The collective West is carrying out this genocide and fighting this war.
Yes, and I think it's important to note all of those instances of suppression, Professor Marandi, because there are some friends too, like Richard Medhurst, as well
That's right.
as Sarah Wilkinson,
absolutely,
and so many others that
So
are
Richard,
facing huge consequences.
Yes, Richard is obviously he's only giving his opinion on he's protesting against genocide. He's being punished against genocide. And the same is true with the other Palestinian activists or pro-Palestinian activists. You don't see any of this in the Western media. You don't see these people being on the BBC or Channel 4 News or CNN or Fox News or the New York Times or the Guardian. They're all erased. And that, I think, that says everything you need to know about Western media. And then, they're intimidating them. They intimidate Richard so that he cannot say what he feels he needs to say, and then they intimidate everyone else because everyone else becomes more careful about what they say. And X is not an exception, and none of them are exception. They're just different factions of the same political regime. And they will, as things stand, they will continue to become more aggressive in silencing. And the amazing thing is that these people are not criticizing the UK. They're not criticizing the United States for its internal politics. They're saying, stop supporting this Holocaust. Stop slaughtering Palestinians, and they're being shut down. Stop the slaughter in this other country, in this other part of the world. The West cannot tolerate that. You don't see Richard or others, talking about events and all that much about events in the UK or France, or their focus is on Palestine. That's what they've been doing for the last 11 weeks. But they have to be quiet. It's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. I think the masks have all been removed, and I think that all those people who have questions, all they have to do is look at Gaza and say who is supporting the Palestinians and who is opposing the Palestinians, and then you know who are the good guys and who are the bad guys.
Russia. India is one example, but this is. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be in Tempe, Arizona, Los Angeles, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, Cincinnati, Lexington, Burbank, California, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets. Don't go anywhere else. So this is this guy Mersheimer, who I've showed you before. He's knows more about international politics than anybody, which is why you'll never see him on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. You have to come to shows like this.
He used to be on them.
So, yeah, but now he's telling too much truth, just like Julian Assange, just like Glenn Greenwald, just like Matt Taibbi.
Far-right extremist
That's right.
Glenn Greenwald. Christian nationalist Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah. So one of the negative consequences of the Ukraine war is how America alienates its crucial or potential allies by antagonizing Russia. India is one example, but this also includes Turkey, the Saudis, Vietnam. The U.S. is slowly, foolishly isolating themselves. We are doing that. So we're pushing away all our friends. Saudi Arabia is now didn't renew the petrodollar. We're pushing away India, Russia, Turkey. This is true, and Vietnam. And this. So here, let's listen to what he has to say.
The Americans, for understandable reasons, want the Indians to join forces with the West and go after the Russians hammer and tongue. The Indians are not buying that argument at all. And I think for smart reasons on the part of India. I think most Indians understand that it was the West that provoked this conflict, and that siding with Ukraine and the West is not a smart policy at this point in time. So the West has this real problem that once you get outside of the West, which includes over half of the people on the planet, you find that most people in that world sympathize with Russia, not with the West. And this causes real problems. And of course, the United States will continue to put pressure on India to side with the West. But my sense is that that won't happen. The Americans.
So
what?
Let me
After
just
all the good we did?
Let me just explain to you what he just said. Half the world is siding with Russia. So as soon as you get out of the West, Europe and the United States, half the world, if not more, is siding with Russia, not
So I
the
gotta
United
buy BRICS.
States. And India is not going along with the United States vis-a-vis Russia. They're not doing it. There's nothing in it for them. So that's what he just explained. Half the world sides with Russia, if not more than half. What do you want to say, Kurt?
I got to get those BRICS dollars or something. When did those come out? I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to go to BRICS probably, right?
Half the world sides with Russia, and the other half is being blackmailed.
That's right. Or you'll be cooed. You'll either be cooed, or we're going to call in that blackmail.
I don't know why India is suspicious of us. I mean, it's been 100 years since the West released you from being subservient slaves to them. How come all the resentment? I mean, if I can trust you with my computer software, you can trust the West about plunging you into World War III. Am I right?
Next, you're going to tell me India is going to send back their bust of Churchill.
I mean, India, you believe in reincarnation. The United States is just going to give you a chance to find out if it's right.
Yeah, we're all going to get a chance. That's the good part.
That's the good part. We're all going to get a chance. So there it is for you.
Yeah.
The
Boy,
United
look at that. All the countries we helped so much. Vietnam, what's their problem with us? I always say to my ag, did Iraq even thank us for our service?
So half the world sides with Russia. Not just keep that in mind. And if you believe what the cable TV news or the New York Times or the Washington Post tells you about war, if you're so stupid, you still believe that, you are a true moron. After the Iraq war, after Libya, after 20 years of lying about Afghanistan and Syria, people still believe the Syria gas attack bullshit.
Yeah, look, you deserve to be cheated on.
Yeah, you deserve
I don't believe it. I think it's wrong to cheat, but when you're that dumb, you must want to be cheated on. Why would you be in this relationship? Why would you stay in this relationship? This is even as good as cheat. You know what? This is even that high status. It's like America's The Other Woman, and the guy promised he's going to divorce his wife. That low. That's how low America is. Oh no, he's going to divorce his wife.
No, it's worse than that. It's like a Cops episode when the battered wife is out in the with blood coming out of her head, laying down on the driveway, and the cops want to arrest him. He's a good man. He works hard.
We're not even married. This is common law.
He's a good man.
Keep the electoral college because I don't want the elites.
Yeah. Keep the electoral college because I don't want the coastal elites running things.
They don't know what I mean. The coastal elites.
You are adorable. Hey, come see us on tour. We'll be
Now, this next video is very disgusting. That's the CNN. Don't want to. Screaming, please, no, I don't want to die. But I would die. I want to be free, don't You can't even go outside in Ukraine, man. They might take your drag your ass off the wall. Only men outside in Ukraine is those who survived the war or those who on their way to. This poor guy made a mistake of trying to go with his girlfriend. Zelensky's a dictator. And filming this, but CNN, their emails must be filled up. They didn't get this footage. They'll never show the American footage. That's how they get troops to fight. All the brave people who signed up, they already. This man probably be dead in a week, man. This is strange. All these police, they need to fight. Yeah, Zelensky. His days is known, man. The dictator who's dragging on to the front line to die. They losing every battle, not winning no battles. Zelensky the small hat. All right. Y'all see that. And there's plenty of video like that, but that's the latest raid that went on in the theater. They dragging young men out of there, forcing them to go fight Putin. And then CNN and MSNBC lying, talking about the brave Ukrainians. Lady, they don't want to fight no more. Who the hell want to fight when you know you're going to die? All the lies about defeating Russia, that is over with.
On the night of October 13th, the Russian armed forces launched another missile and bomb attack on military facilities located in the territory of Ukraine. This time, Russia attacked strategically important military installations in regions such as Sumy, Donetsk, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, and Odessa. At the same time, it is worth noting that yesterday's missile attack on Odessa may go down in history as a turning point in the current conflict that led to the outbreak of World War III. The fact is that, unlike other regions of Ukraine, a really powerful explosion occurred in Odessa, the negative consequences of which have already begun to be felt not only by citizens of Ukraine, but also by citizens of neighboring NATO countries. However, before moving on to the main topic of this video, I would first like to discuss the words of the commander of Spetsnaz Akhmat with you. In particular, General Avdiy officially stated that the Ukrainian army units continue to retreat rapidly in the Kursk direction of the front. According to him, over the past 60 days, Russian troops have liberated 19 settlements in the Kursk region. Avdiy noted that the Ukrainian army was almost completely drained of blood in the Koronevsky district of the Kursk region, and that now Ukrainian troops are also suffering heavy losses in manpower and equipment in the Sudzansky district of this Russian region. General Avdiy noted that over the past 24 hours, in the Kursk region of the front, the Ukrainian army has lost 320 soldiers and 15 units of heavy equipment, including 2 German Leopard tanks. Since August 6, the total losses of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk direction of the front amounted to 23,000 soldiers, 158 tanks, 100 armored personnel carriers, 73 infantry fighting vehicles, 910 armored combat vehicles, 650 pickup trucks, 190 artillery pieces, and 50 units of multiple rocket launchers. Overall, the terrible situation of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region is recognized not only by Western analytical centers, but even by Ukrainian Telegram channels. According to them, despite the current difficult situation for the Ukrainian army in the Kursk direction of the front, the Ukrainian High Military Command is not going to order the withdrawal of troops from this Russian region. Moreover, it became known that the head of the Kiev regime not only demanded to hold the positions of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region, but also to expand control over Russian territory at any cost. Against this backdrop, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrsky, continued to strengthen the grouping of the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region. In particular, war correspondents reported that over the past 24 hours, several units of the Ukrainian army left the Kharkiv and Zaporizhia regions and headed towards the city of Sumy, to form new reserves for their subsequent dispatch to the Kursk region. According to war correspondents, these actions of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine have already harmed the Ukrainian army in other directions of the front. It is reported that over the past 24 hours, Russian troops have significantly increased the intensity of offensive actions in the Zaporizhia direction of the front. As a result, on the morning of October 13th, war correspondents confirmed that the Russian army had managed to take control of the strategically important settlement of Lebednoy, in the Zaporizhia direction of the front. In addition, on October 13th, war correspondents from both sides also stated that the fighters of the group of troops under the designation center took control of the settlement of Ostrovskoye in the Kurakovo direction of the front. Against this backdrop, insiders in Kiev said that the Ukrainian General Staff recognized that the collapse of the front could occur in the coming weeks, as the Ukrainian army does not have enough forces and means to hold the front along the entire combat contact line. Nevertheless, the Kiev regime continues to assert that the Ukrainian army units should remain in the Kursk region no matter what. The fact is that the Kiev regime sincerely believes that the presence of Ukrainian soldiers on Russian soil creates the illusion of the possibility of the Ukrainian army advancing and even gaining victories. Meanwhile, on the night of October 13th, Russia launched a highly resultative rocket and bomb attack on military facilities in Sumy, Donetsk, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, and Odessa regions. Independent monitoring services have recorded about 15 powerful explosions in these regions. It is reliably known that during this attack, the Russian armed forces used Iskander-M ballistic missiles and guided aerial bombs of the ODAB and FAB families. So, in the Sumy region, dozens of Russian-guided aerial bombs of the FAB family rained down on the heads of Ukrainian soldiers in the border settlements adjacent to the Kursk region. As a result of this attack, the supply of the Ukrainian army grouping in the Kursk region was disrupted. In the Donetsk region, in the northwestern part of the city of Konstantinovka, a Russian ODAB 1500 guided aerial bomb hit and destroyed the building of the former branch of the Ukrainian transport company in time. It is reported that the Ukrainian military stored a large number of 155mm shells in this building, as well as missiles for Western multiple launch rocket systems. In the Kherson region, Russian ballistic missiles hit and destroyed a classified warehouse, where ammunition and fuel intended for the Ukrainian army were stored. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, in cities such as Dnipro, Kryvyi Rog, and Pavlograd, independent monitoring services recorded about 7 explosions. My friends, let me remind you that it is through these cities that the main supply road for Ukrainian army units in the west of Donbass passes. And finally, in the Odessa region, in the port part of the city of Chernomorsk, a Russian Iskander-M ballistic missile struck the container vessel Chue Spirit. It is reported that at the time of the destruction of this ship, a highly unusual powerful explosion occurred, as a result of which the radiation background in the city of Chernomorsk increased significantly. According to the coordinator of the Russian underground in Ukraine, Sergei Lebedev, tens of thousands of NATO depleted uranium shells were in the hold of this ship. According to him, after the explosion, a radioactive column of smoke rose about 40 meters high. It is reported that due to the strong southeasterly wind, this radioactive column of smoke began to head towards Romania. Sergei Lebedev claims that the blast wave at the time of the destruction of the NATO ship full of depleted uranium shells turned out to be so powerful and destructive that 2 boats of the Ukrainian Border Guard Service, located 30 meters from this vessel, were also destroyed along with crew members.
So, as of right now, we are getting strange reports coming out of Washington, D.C. and Raleigh, North Carolina, and I do believe Indiana as well, where people are reporting some kind of massive airship had crash landed. Now, credit where credit's due, a person who has subscribed to this channel had alerted me of this current event or events, and I have to say it's rather bizarre because two separate people in two separate states are talking about this bizarre crash landing. And matter of fact, one of the individuals, which I'm going to go ahead and show video footage of, actually shows the smoke trail, and the smoke trail is rather large. I'm going to go ahead and play the video footage, and then I'm going to go ahead and give my take at the end of the video.
I do not know what's going on right now. I heard a noise. I come outside. There's sirens blaring, and I see this huge trail in the sky. It's midnight right now, and there's this huge trail like something crash landed. What the heck is that? What is this? I wonder if there's anything on the news about this.
Yo, am I tripping right? Okay, so I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Please tell me if anybody saw this. But I was coming back from the gym off of this back road outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're like the road and the trees and the sky opens up. What the? I swear I saw giant sparks, like a plane, like maybe on fire or like, I don't know, but it was like there was sparks across the sky and it left like a huge like illuminated smoke trail like behind it for a long time. And then like 3 seconds later, the biggest aircraft I've ever seen in my life flies right over my truck, and it was completely silent. And it had like 4 flashing lights on it. What the fuck? And then now, like right outside, I'm here for work, living in a hotel, and right outside my hotel, there's like 4 black undercover police officers just like posted up at an intersection. I don't know what the did I just see? Someone please tell me they saw this. This happened like 5 minutes ago, and I can't find anything on it. There's like no sirens. Like, what the fuck?
I do not know.
I don't know what's currently going on in North Carolina, Washington, D.C. And like I said, in some of the comment sections of these videos, people are saying that they witnessed the same exact thing in Indiana as well. But there are absolutely no news updates as to any aircraft crashing in the area, whether it's a regular plane, a 747, or something else altogether. There's absolutely no news as of right now. But this actually reminds me of a video I had seen not too long ago where a couple of guys that were in their car driving and they witnessed something bizarre in the sky. They were recording it. And then a couple states over, somebody else recorded the exact same thing. But these orbs or whatever they were circling this thing that was on fire. Check this out.
What the fuck is that? That's not a plane. It's a giant airplane. It's just circling around. And then it's disappearing. The lights are turning off. It's not.
What is also rather interesting, around the same time that these reports are coming out that something crashed in Washington, D.C., there was a Metropolitan Police copter that was tracking something in Washington, D.C., and it was flying back and forth. You can see it circling around. So what exactly is going on here? I have been staying up to date on this crash landing that occurred in both Washington, D.C., North Carolina, and I do believe Indiana as well. There's an individual who, in the Washington, D.C. area, heard something, but he also encountered a very heavy police presence. Now I'm going to go ahead and play his video, but something else interesting also occurred that involves the Washington, D.C. alerts, and I'm going to go ahead and show that after I play this gentleman's video, and I'm going to go ahead and play that video now.
Shh. It's early in the morning on the U.S. Capitol grounds. And man, security and law enforcement is everywhere. Walk with me. Look at this. What is going on? Have you ever seen something like this? With Capitol, no police? Man. Everywhere. What's going on? And it's quiet, as if they're waiting for something, expecting something, preparing for something. Look over here. Let's walk over here. Come on, come on. Let's walk over here. Morning. You got all this? What's going on here? Let's go. Let's turn around, look at that again. Man, turn around, look at that. Let them see it. What's going on here? Oh, my. I'm going to figure, I mean, it's as if the entire law enforcement force is here early in the morning. I'll get back to you, okay? I'll get something's going on. You got to do some research. I got to see if there's some threats. If there's something big going on in the nation's capital, I'll figure it out. Stand by.
So like I said, we're going to go ahead and go to Washington, D.C. alerts, and we're going to go ahead and look at 4:49 a.m. because something strange happened around that time. This alert says, alert MPD units are investigating a blank in the blank block of blank. Look out for do not take action. Call 911 with event number. Sent to 1st District, parentheses PSA 201-208. Alert DC sent by MPD CAD number reviewer. Even the CAD number is blank, which is odd. Taking a look at the other alerts on this page, you can see nothing else like this. No other alert is blank. You can even see the CAD number on these other alerts. So this one really stands out. What happened at 4:45 in the morning where they are withholding information? Not only is there a heavy police presence on ground, but we also know that there was this police helicopter that was flying over the vicinity of Washington, D.C. as well, making a few circles as if it was tracking something. Before we do get into another individual's video who also experienced something today in Washington, D.C., people are asking why have we not heard any updates from the news and media when it comes to this crash landing. Sometimes the news does not update until Monday, or something big could have definitely happened and they're sweeping it under the rug and trying to come up with some narrative. That's also possible as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and play this person's video who also, like I said, experienced something in Washington, D.C. as well.
Minutes out of Washington, D.C. right now, okay? And last night around 4 a.m., the weirdest fucking thing ever possibly happened to me. I've seen UFO crashes, okay? But I was so fucking confused at what I saw. I saw an aircraft that looked like it was just blazing to the ground. And I've never really seen an aircraft this fucking big. You feel me? When I tell you that this motherfucker was huge, and then not even 12 minutes after it just so happened to crash, I guess. I don't know. I heard a loud explosion. All I heard was a ton of police cars in the distance. And I mean a ton of police cars, okay? So I just so happened to go on TikTok because I'm like, I wonder if anybody else is talking about this right now. So I actually tagged him in the comments below. I want you to go check out his video. But that streak in the sky looked exactly like what he's showing in the video. It's fucking weird, man. And there is a couple of people that are talking about the same thing happening in a couple of different states. And I'm not sure whether or not to believe them, but there was a huge comet that was due to come across the night sky that hasn't been across the night sky in over 80,000 years, apparently, this weekend. So I find that kind of coincidental. Regardless, if there's anybody that just so happened to see anything in the DC area, please do comment below, okay?
There is another individual in North Carolina who captured some bizarre orbs in the sky around the North Carolina airport. Now, these, whatever they are huddled together, these can't be planes because planes do not fly so close together. And these can't be drones because from what I understand, drones do not fly over airports. So who knows what these are, but it's another rather interesting video when you put everything into perspective. Sorry if it sounds like I'm stumbling over my words. I'm talking fast because I'm excited, very excited about this video. We have something very strange going on. This could even be the beginnings of Project Bluebeam. There's a lot of alien and UFO talk coming, and we have to be very aware. We have to use our discernment when it comes to this alien talk. We have alien and UFO talk coming up in November in regards to Congress. So there's a lot of UFO and alien talk in the media. And like I said, they're probably getting us prepared for this Project Bluebeam, the staged false alien invasion. With that being said, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to this channel because I do have a lot to say when it comes to Project Bluebeam. And I hope to release that video next Sunday.
We are totally, Ryan and I are absolutely freaking out, dude. We do not know what this is over Point Loma. This is a video live. You guys see the airport facing west. They've had 2 grouped. Now there's 5. It's definitely some sort of pattern-ish thing going on. Bright orange lights. Does not look like white lighting. And you'll notice the bottom left one just went out. You can see up in the top right of the screen, there's a plane flying. It's clearly a plane. Now that bottom right one went out. What's weird is they're so static, dude. I mean, could they be drones with super bright lights on them? Yeah, I don't think so either. Definitely pulsating white. Here's a plane in the foreground taking off, obviously.
Because this crash landing DC thing is really bizarre. And is it affecting our sleep? What's going on? I'm on the East Coast and I went to bed at 10 and I woke up at 3 a.m. like it was time to wake up, even though I feel exhausted, but I'm wide awake. And I was on TikTok watching the guy in Raleigh in his car who saw something in the sky that had lights and it had like this fiery tail. So I go to the comments expecting people to talk about what he saw, but there's like several people like, why are we all awake? And everyone was just like posting 15 minutes ago. So then I'm like, no, legitimately, like, why are we awake? And everyone was like, yeah, why are we awake? What is going on? Like, it's one thing to kind of like just be awake, but it kind of feels like I'm exhausted. Why am I awake? And why is everybody on the same page saying that? And evidently there's a video from a guy in DC that has like a smoke trail and he hears sirens and stuff. What's going on? Okay, I'm just doing a check-in because this crash landing DC thing is really bizarre. And is it affecting our sleep?
Are the feds trying to muddy the water with the UFO disclosure product? There seems to be a lot of charlatans and people who don't actually know what's going on suddenly throwing their voice into the mix, trying to distract us from what's really happening. We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about what is the government hiding at the South Pole Station in Antarctica. Turns out the South Pole Station not only is an earthquake generating machine. Yes, the station can create earthquakes around the world. In fact, we've gotten quite good at it. It's devastating. In fact, the devastating earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand, yes, that was the fault of this massive South Pole Station. As also, it is a interstellar air traffic control tower at the South Pole Station. I know this might blow the minds of many of you watching right now, but many of you are awake and understand what's going on. Very few people have actually been to the South Pole Station. Very few people know what's actually happening there, but our next guest worked for Raytheon and was stationed at the South Pole Station. He saw the technology in action, and now he's a whistleblower trying to wake all of us up to what these governments are doing and how the feds are perhaps trying to muddy the water right now. My guest is Eric Hecker. Welcome back to the show, Eric. Great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me, Clayton. I've been looking forward to talking to you again.
Me as well. You and I spoke about a month ago on a separate topic, but I will say that we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to talk about the weather manipulation. We're going to talk about what's obviously unfolding in Antarctica at the South Pole Station, and how all of these things are tied together. But you and I talked about a month ago because you've noticed something that's been happening in the UFO disclosure community, where there are people who are really trying to interject themselves and perhaps trying to muddy the waters on disclosure. And we're seeing a lot of obfuscation right now happening. So, for instance, just at the South Pole Station, as an example, right? You were stationed there, but there are people who claim to have gone to Antarctica, but really are only there as tourists, like on a cruise ship, have never actually been to the South Pole Station. But then they release videos talking about all the details of the South Pole Station, and they've never actually been there. That's just one example. But what has been bothering you so much right now about the state of UFO disclosure in the United States and around the world?
I guess my frustration, Clayton, is that these people are, being put in the spotlight, put on a pedestal, that their information is being put to the forefront when it's unsubstantiated speculation. Like you just mentioned, these people have not been to the fifth largest continent on the planet, short of one person who went as a rich tourist and basically had the party line thrown in his face and learned nothing. That's Brad Olson. I mean, I'm not here to pull punches. The folks that I see discussing the topic of Antarctica unjustifiably would be folks like Brad Olson, Linda Moulton Howe, Dr. Michael Salla. They are being bamboozled by people that they're calling whistleblowers and putting out to the public as whistleblowers, as if these people have the capacity to vet these personnel. They don't have the life experience to realize when someone's lying to them. They don't know what's going on. They've yet to provide one single picture of any whistleblower being in Antarctica. That's a major red flag. These same people will say, "Well, you're not allowed to have cameras there, and it's banned." Well, how come I have so many pictures and videos from my presence in Antarctica? I stand in defiance of them because I know that they're being either lied to or they're part of the lie, because there's just too much information that they put out that I can challenge all day long. If I was to talk to one of their supposed whistleblowers, I would obliterate their story in 2 seconds flat. This is just, it's time for people to really step up and challenge these people that are claiming to be experts on topics that they're not.
You mentioned Brad Olson. What specifically has he said about the South Pole Station and the South Pole specifically, and what do you say is inaccurate?
One of the things that Brad likes putting to market is that there is a hole at the South Pole Station, as originally reported by Admiral Byrd, but then by, again, some anonymous whistleblower that we're told by Brad has observed said hole at the South Pole Station. And he often references that there is a no-fly zone at the South Pole Station. I literally, myself, in person to Brad Olson, I've spoken to this man many times on this topic. I showed him a map of the South Pole Station that very clearly indicates there is a no-fly zone in a quadrant of the facility known as ARO, A-R-O, the Atmospheric Research Observatory. It is a clean air studies facility at face value. In that area where the no-fly zone is listed, like every map has a key. You know, we've all seen maps before, and there's a key that gives greater detail. So when the pilots look and they see on the map, no-fly zone, they go to the key, and it clarifies that in the no-fly zone, you must fly above 8,000 feet. It's not that you can't fly there. It's that they instill a floor, and that floor height is 8,000 feet. You must fly above it. There's no ceiling restriction, which means you can fly as high as you want. So reasonable logic dictates that you can fly anywhere you want at the South Pole, except for in one small area where you cannot go below 8,000 feet. So this would provide no restriction of view if there was a hole at the South Pole Station. Brad is simply just picking and choosing the information and which whistleblowers he wants to put information out from. The information that he's choosing to put out is unsubstantiated, speculative junk when he has had verifiable intelligence put to him that he could utilize and chooses not to. I wonder what his motives are. There's no hole. I've been there. I can prove that I was there. I can prove the conversation of the no-fly zone not being as presented to the public. I wonder why he is trying to confuse the masses.
There's a lot of that going on right now in Washington, D.C., around the UFO disclosure movement right now. Just more broadly, why do you think the feds are injecting themselves into this in order to muddy the waters? And then what would be the objective to try to muddy everything right now?
I absolutely do, because I use the word tapped. When people try to feed me bad intel or just, discern the level of information that I have available to me. So I see it regularly in my own firsthand experience. And then in regards to the question of motive, I mean, this is the intelligence and counterintelligence game as a standard. They want to cover up the good information with misinformation and disinformation so they can continue doing what they're doing. When I went to Washington, D.C., and I testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee and ARROW, basically the conversation reduced down to, Eric, now that we have information like yours that supports that we now have these rogue factions running around with technology that the average person almost couldn't even consider exists, what do you think we should do? And it's a very challenging question because the game is being played very hard, and these rogue factions seem to be very unaccounted for. It's very challenging to discern how many different groups are out there, but for anybody that wants to get into the disclosure community, you will find in very short order that you either agree with the speculative, unsubstantiated crap, or you do not get a voice. You, sir, are one of the few and far between people that I feel is actually a diamond in the rough in this community because you're not playing those games.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have no agenda. I just have the truth. And I have people that try to spin me crap all the time, right? And so I want people who were there. I want people who were in these locations, you being in the South Pole Station, you're seeing it with your eyes. There's so many things right now. I think people say, I'm not going to believe it until there's a craft that lands in my front yard or on the in front of the White House. That's when I'll believe it. Show me the alien bodies and I'll believe it. Okay, that's one piece of it. But here, Eric worked at the South Pole Station and witnessed this technology in action. And your sources are impeccable and you have the receipts to show it. So this is what I'm most interested in, is the actual facts. And what you've been able to bring to the table is phenomenal. I've been fascinated. I think some of my fascination has come from some of that speculation about Antarctica over the years. The ideas, the speculation that there's a massive underground base under Antarctica, that there is a giant hole there and all of these things. And what you're saying is, no, there's not. But the truth is actually more powerful and stunning than all of this speculation, right?
Yes, exactly. The truth is scarier than the fiction, and I think that's why they keep pumping the fiction, because they don't want people to know what the truth is. I was recently invited to speak over in the Alamosa area of Colorado at a invite-only event, and I was able to get a gentleman who's in the disclosure community. He goes by the name of Rex Bear of the Leak Project, and he wanted to come out and interview me while I was in Colorado. So of course I agreed. I'm trying to get the truth out there. In my communications with him, he informed me that he has been sitting for a couple of years on an interview that he did with one of the last survivors of Admiral Byrd's expedition. He stated to me that in this interview, that this gentleman destroyed all the narratives that are out in the community now regarding Antarctica. And I asked him why he wasn't putting this information out there. And I just got a peculiar look. So again, these are things that I'm learning by diving into the disclosure community, is that there are more people trying to control the narrative and hide the truth than there are folks that are interested in the truth, the ramifications to what that means for we the people, and avoiding this discussion of what should we do now that we realize that we're in hot water. There's great disparity between the technologies that you and I and everybody else gets to utilize every day and the technologies of those that are oppressing us. I believe, and I bastardize and misquote people, but I'll do my best on this. I believe Goth said that the limits of tyrants are prescribed by the level of patience of those whom they oppress. We have to break out of this. We are allowing ourselves to be treated this way. And there are folks that are helping to control the narrative to keep us in this state of oppression. And look how that's panning out for the folks in North Carolina and Florida right now.
Let's talk about the weather piece of this. So we're seeing the weather manipulation. We've covered this extensively here on the show. The NextRad radar systems that have been used to direct and move these storms in a path of destruction. The control of these storms is unbelievable. And I think most Americans were kind of silent, didn't realize that this was actually happening. I think the cat is out of the bag on all of this now. I'm curious, maybe you can paint a picture. In the introduction, I painted a little bit of a picture of what the South Pole Station is, and when you work there, how it actually is able to be used as an earthquake generating machine, what else it's doing there, and maybe how this is tied to the current weather events and all of the things that we're seeing right now across the United States. Can you give our audience more of an overview of that?
Absolutely. The South Pole Station has a system known as the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector. It is currently the world's largest phased array transmitter. This is basically Tesla technology. I'm sure a lot of the audience is familiar with systems like HARP, which is effectively built on the surface of the Earth, and it has a 2D situation. It has length and width as far as a phased array goes. The South Pole Station differs in so far as it also goes down deep into the ice, giving it a third dimension, length, width, and height. So it has exponential more, I guess you would say, capabilities, targeting
than the HARP
discharge of
machines
power. Then it's like HARP on steroids, basically. So yes, it generated the earthquakes that occurred in Christchurch, New Zealand, in February of 2011.
And you told me before. I'll let you go on in a second. But when you and I chatted on the phone a few weeks ago, you mentioned, I don't know if you can say this now or if I'm speaking out of telling tales out of school here, but you were speaking to a source that you worked with at the South Pole Station. Since you left there, said the technology has gotten so advanced now with these generation of earthquakes that it's like an autopilot system in an aircraft. I think you described it, that it's so advanced now, it would blow your mind at how targeted these earthquakes are that they can use from the South Pole Station.
Basically, the trick of it all, one of the things that I learned when I went to this event in Alamosa, Colorado, I spoke with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Simeon Hine, and he was doing a presentation on ball lightning. And one of the things that he discussed was how there are reports when earthquakes occur that ball lightning, I guess you would say, is ejected, manufactured by the earthquake. So I engaged him in a dialogue, and I said, well, Doc, wouldn't there be some sort of symmetry there that if an earthquake can discharge ball lightning, wouldn't we be able to deliver ball lightning to generate an earthquake? And he agreed that it's just simply the matter of being able to deliver said energy, which for all practical purposes, think of it having an explosive capacity to it. So if you can wirelessly transmit energy from a power supply somewhere on Earth, deliver it to another location, the end result is quite simply an earthquake. Wireless transmission of energy is something that Nikola Tesla has brought up, 100 some odd years ago now. So this is the state of the union, is that Nikola Tesla discovered this stuff. The powers that be absconded his information. They cordoned it off away from the mass population and have been monopolizing the use of these types of technologies for many decades now. We, the people, are suffering under this monopoly of technology by our oppressors. It's literally just that simple. And that would be the motive for them to have agents, for lack of a better term, flooding the disclosure community with BS to muddy the waters and confuse us, we the people, so that we can continue to be wholly oppressed and well managed.
When you were at the South Pole Station, you witnessed this ice cube neutrino machine in action. So it goes deep and it's and much larger than HARP. And I guess just walk us through what they would be using this for. How would they be manipulating the weather? How would they be manipulating and targeting earthquakes around the world? Why would they be doing this? And who is in control of the South Pole Station at this point? Is it the United States government? You were a contractor with Raytheon when you were there. Is it a private enterprise? Who is controlling it?
Great questions. First and foremost, one of the things that the former crew members had emphasized to me to try to get people to understand as I'm trying to get this information out there is that you have to understand it's just very easy now to deliver that energy anywhere on the planet. It's not challenging.
Like they can pick a spot. They can They can pick a spot in Iran and they can just dial it in on the computer and launch an earthquake.
Deliver the energy that instigates it. The term that people should become familiar with is earthquake induction or earthquake inducing. So similar to like when you go on the internet and you Google chemtrails, right? You're going to get a whole bunch of baloney that says chemtrails are garbage, blah, blah. But if you Google the term stratospheric aerosol injection, you'll start to find all the science of what's really going on when they crisscross our skies. So
and the patents and all of that.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So if you look up inducing earthquakes or earthquake induction, you will become privy to a sea of information and science that supports the existence of this technology. It's just that available. People just need to start paying attention to what's going on in the world around them and this disparity in technology. As far as who's running the facility, I'm not 100% sure. This was part of that conversation that I had in Washington, D.C., is because it seems like these, unacknowledged special access programs, USAP, which anybody who's paying close attention, USAP is the actual title of the Antarctic program. It's the United States Antarctic Program, USAP. It is a USAP program by definition. So they are being very deceptive as to what the secondary and tertiary capacities are for this massive phased array system, and they're just pumping it out to the general population as if it's operating under the auspices of science. Of course, things like that have to be secreted away. They're not going to be running around saying we have the world's largest directed energy weapons system at the South Pole Station in Antarctica, because first and foremost, it would breach the Antarctic treaties. And people would say, oh, well, they would never do that. Well, study Greenland and look what happened down there when the United States of America was sneaking nuclear missile bases into Greenland without telling the local authorities. This is an activity that our nation and many other nations are more than happy to break the rules every single chance they get.
I mentioned at the top, and this is something from your testimony, that this South Pole Station is also a giant air traffic control center that's monitoring the traffic of interstellar travel. I think for anybody who might not be aware of that, they're saying this, wait, interstellar, you mean craft that's going out into the solar system and beyond. We are tracking that with a control tower at the South Pole Station.
Effectively, the ice cube neutrino detector in its primary purpose is a neutrino observing facility. What I learned in my communications when I went to Washington, D.C., was that what we commonly refer to as UFOs, they're exotic propulsion systems that allow them to do the things that many witnesses have observed, and many nations, states, and rogue factions seem to have access to this technology, is that their propulsion systems emit neutrinos. So, just like we have radar systems at a standard airport that can track the air traffic of conventionally powered air vehicles, well, now we have this new format that requires observation, whether it's vehicles that are from our own human hands, if it's something in-world, off-world, regardless of where they come from, apparently these propulsion systems emit neutrinos, and that provides us an avenue to observe their activities. Why would we not observe those activities if we had the capacity to?
It's unbelievable. Where do you think things stand right now with the UFO disclosure? We saw past couple of days, of course, revelations from journalist Michael Schellenberger about the name for one of these programs. I think it's Operation Immaculate Constellation. So we're getting some more information, but it seems like drips and drabs. Where do you see it as an insider, as someone who's been on the inside of this?
I see it as an utter and complete circus. You have a ringmaster in the circus, and it's his job to keep everybody's focus on the ring that is lit for the show while they stage 2 other rings for the next event. That's what I see going on, is they keep trying to control the vernacular. They keep trying to come up with new words and rewrite the next chapter of some science fiction tale that lacks any substance. And this is how they lead the people away from the truth. You have folks like David Grush, who is basically just a whipping boy for Christopher Mellon, and the folks in our government that are trying to control the narrative. David Grush basically got thrown out in front of a microphone out of nowhere, almost immediately on the heels of the disclosure event that I testified to in Washington, D.C., as a person with direct firsthand experience in actionable intelligence. I believe that was an operation to take people's attention away from what could be proven by what they want folks to speculate about. There was really nothing that he presented that was of great value, other than getting everybody to say, oh, the the government's telling us about UFOs. What did they tell you? Did they tell you where? Did they tell you what?
Right.
I
Yeah,
did.
They really haven't told us anything, but you have.
How come that group that he spoke to hasn't asked to speak with me? I have actual intelligence. I can tell them where to invade and what to shut down. How come they don't?
Yeah, Nancy Mace, you have representatives of Congress. Nancy Mace, if you're watching right now, when you're one of the people on this committee holding these hearings. Here's Eric. He worked at the South Pole Station. He's got the receipts. Why haven't they reached out to you? You were literally in Washington, D.C. testifying, and they haven't reached out to you?
Correct. When I testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, they thanked me for sharing my information. They told me it would be input into the National Archives, and they told me that my deposition would be expedited to Congress. At that time, I felt that meant they were going to do something about it. I'm pissed off. They didn't do anything about it. Now we have more Americans in harm's way due to potential weather manipulation. Can I testify that I know that the South Pole Station was a part of the weather manipulation as of most recent? I don't know, but I can presume that because of the existence of this technology, we have to at least consider it.
So let's talk about that. I'll get you out of here soon here, Eric, but the weather manipulation piece of this, we talked about the earthquake piece of this. So we've seen a number of these NEXRAD radar systems going off in bursts and basically directing Hurricane Helene into an area where the NEXRAD radar systems were not going off, being directed in a path. Of course, a lot of discussion about HARP and how all of this plays into it. If you talked about the South Pole Station, the ice cube neutrino machine basically being HARP on steroids, how would it or likely be used with Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene in the United States?
I believe it would just be simple delivery of energy. That it is that simple. These systems themselves, we're just observing Mother Nature and the flow of her energies. We call it a storm. We call it a hurricane. It's just a matter of practice through the application and delivery from systems like this that have copious amounts of power available to deliver. It's just a matter of playing around and learning the targeting and reaction. It's application of intention and checking the reaction. And this is something that they seem to have gotten dialed in, whether it be through one singular system at the South Pole, or like we're seeing with the NEXRAD systems, or potentially through integrating with other HARP platforms around the world. We just need to start to appreciate that this is exactly how it works and how simple it can be. Energy can be delivered wirelessly with great accuracy and impact, and we're witnessing it with our own eyes. And we need to start asking the right questions of the right people. And we need to stop being led by the nose by the misinformationists and disinformationists that, frankly, don't really have any skin in the game other than profiteering.
We've seen some videos as it relates to what's been going on with Israel and Iran and Lebanon over the past couple of weeks. And we have been hearing rumblings that we are sort of, on the face of it, about to face sort of a manufactured World War III. The saviors of that World War III would be some sort of fake alien invasion. I keep hearing this over the past couple of months from different sources. Get prepared for a fake alien invasion that will be something done by the governments, and we will all sort of fall in line with this. I know this sounds preposterous to a lot of people, but what do you make of these rumblings? Have you anything concrete to share with us?
I think they're very concerning because I believe that the fake alien invasion situation is actually a trick up the sleeve for those that are interested in what's referred to as continuity of government. If they can manufacture a large enough emergency, they can just simply throw the Constitution out and take full control in a dictatorial capacity. If people do not believe that this can occur, well, check your history books and look what happened after 9/11 and the Patriot Act. It's already occurred. We are already operating under emergency powers as applied by the Patriot Act. They just want to kick this can further down the road. People should be terrified at the idea of a false flag alien invasion because it has nothing to do with legitimate UFO disclosure and everything to do about taking your rights away even further than they have. The children today do not even have one close taste of the freedom that you and I had as children, Clayton, and they want to make that even further from their understanding. People don't know what freedom is. If George Washington was walking around the United States of America today, do you think he would say, "Look at all the freedom that I provided to you"?
No, it would look like a tyrannical government, and and Thomas Jefferson would say the very thing he said back then, which is, if the people fear their government, it's time to shake off that government and start anew. And
Yes.
people fear their government right now. And you're right,
Correct.
the continuity of government piece of this is terrifying. We already have in place that with an invasion, with a national security threat, basically the president of the United States is void, and the head of NORAD becomes the de facto leader of the United States, right, to protect us in the case of some sort of massive invasion. These videos that have been circulating during the bombings from Iran showed bizarre craft shooting missiles out of the sky. So these videos started surfacing. Like, where did these, like, they almost look like UFOs shooting these missiles out of the sky? Is that sort of the prelude for what we're about to see here? I mean, it's terrifying, but I think we should all wake up and just ask these questions and not be scared of asking these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if we hypothesize, like you said earlier, what could be the motive? What could they be intending with this technology that I'm trying to fill people in on? And it could quite simply be that, is to be able, I believe it was William Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage. Well, I think that we're very unaware of the stagecraft that's going on. And as they're setting the scenes and they're getting ready for, the ringmaster to light up the next ring, it could be just that simple, is that they want, like, we have guys like Lou Elizondo and David Grush, we don't have, there's UFOs out there, but, we certainly don't have the technology. Well, that's the lie. That's what their job is to convince the American people that the United States government and many other factions have not had this technology in their hands for many decades, because that is the stagecraft that they hold power with. And if tomorrow they wanted to bust out American military technology and claim that it was aliens, I mean, what percentage of the population do you think would just believe that immediately? And that's the scary thing, is that they will, just like after 9/11, when all of that stagecraft occurred, people were very happy to relinquish their rights.
Right. Yeah, we take off our shoes at the airport now. I mean, this is...
we
we're
get
happy to have
harassed
our
at the
faces.
airport. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think George
happy to have
Washington and the founding fathers said something about the right to travel unharassed. But we've lost that.
Yeah, we are. We're very quick. We need a common enemy, and a fake alien invasion would be that massive common enemy that we could all relinquish our rights to the government to control us. Just after 9/11.
What if they use technology that's at the South Pole to whip up an earthquake or whip up a storm? Stuff that's never been seen before, but then lay it at the feet of supposed said aliens. And now we have to yield because, look what they can do, and there's nothing we can do about it, when in reality, it's them doing it.
Right. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, you see these crazy storm clouds, lightning we've never seen before, storms we've never seen before, and they want to blame it on climate change, right? But they're all whipping it up using these different HAARP machines.
Yeah, I mean, the patents for HAARP state very clearly that they are ionospheric heaters. I mean, so there's your global warming right there. So we're doing it with our own technology, not by the devices that they claim to be. It's not cows farting in the barn, folks. It's the patented ionospheric heaters. There's one in Gakona, Alaska. I went to twice. I worked with alongside a gentleman who told me that he himself personally, and he said he would interview with me. We've just yet to cross paths for that. But he said he worked on the generators at the HARP facility in Gakona, Alaska, in what they call connexes, which we call them like a cat in a box, a generator in a portable, movable, those metal things that you see at the shipping yards. We call them connexes. So he was escorted by armed guard to work on the generators, stuffed into the metal box and told if they come out without permission, they'll get shot. It's a very serious location. He said that the amount of power for the generators at the HARP was off the wall stuff he's never seen before. So people really, they don't appreciate the power that's being played with by these systems. As an example, the South Pole Station, the Ice Cube Neutrino Detector, currently the largest phased array transmitter on the planet. All right, folks, here's what's going on with that. It's about to be increased in size 10-fold. It's already approved. It's moving forwards. It's going to be made 10 times bigger. My question is, why?
Right. It can already send earthquakes around the world with a push of a button. It can already manipulate the weather around the world with the push of a button. Why do you need it any larger?
What's the return on investment? What's it going to cost? And what's the return on investment? What did it cost already? And what's the return on investment for what we were told by its primary mission? All right, let's take them for their word. It's a neutrino detector. Okay, well, what did it cost? And what's the price per neutrino detected? And what do we do with that information? What's the value in science that's the return on the investment for the average mortgage payer that's investing into this? What do we care where neutrinos are coming from? It doesn't seem to have much logic and reasoning to what we're being told its function is. But if we realize that there are rogue factions in control of the world's largest phased array transmitter that can deliver copious amounts of energy anywhere on the planet to manipulate storms, to increase them, to steer them, to create earthquakes. It was many decades ago that the Air Force put together a plan to control the weather by 2025. This is a report that's available on the internet now. This is a report that was handed to me in great secrecy many years ago. I was told to never get caught with it. But it stated very clearly that weather warfare and weather manipulation was the battlefield of the future. That he who controls the weather controls the planet. I do not believe that the United States government is the only faction working in this capacity. I do not even believe that nation states are the only factions working in this capacity. In my experience, nation states are puppets to military industrial corporation contractors. Those folks run the world. Because there's no freedom of information that allows you to dig into their archives and let us know what they're doing. They simply manufacture whatever they want and then sell it to the highest bidder. Nothing prevents these companies from building their own fleets of UFOs. Nothing's stopping them from going off planet and mining asteroids if they want. Here's another thing that people don't consider. If we're not told that a technology exists, then it's not regulated.
Oh.
Think about that. If we don't know it exists, it's not regulated. So these corporations can invent stuff. They don't have to put it to market. It's more valuable to be in an unregulated state, and then it's compartmentalized, and they can do whatever they want because no one knows it's going on. Maybe corporations have nation states bowing to them right now, right? Maybe a corporation runs the South Pole Station. Oh, that's right. Currently, Lockheed Martin has the contract. It used to be Raytheon, but now it's Lockheed Martin, another military industrial contractor. I do maintenance work for a living. I'm aware that there are contracting companies that can provide the services needed at the South Pole Station that don't make weapons. Why is it that only weapons grade contractors seem to be able to get these contracts? If you're simply providing janitorial services, equipment and station maintenance, cooking culinary crews, why is that in Lockheed Martin's arena? Why was it in Raytheon's arena?
You know, it makes you feel like, I said this on the show the other day, it really just makes me feel like we're all being played. You know, we're just simply,
totally
you mentioned, you know, Shakespeare, like the whole, you know, all the world's a stage, and we're just, you know, we're just pawns right now on their massive chessboard,
Totally.
being manipulated. And it's deeply disturbing. And you think about HARP. I mean, what do they tell us that HARP is supposed to be for? What is the cover story for why we even have these HARP, ionizers heating in the atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Technically, the answer is they really don't. They don't really tell us in any specificity what the purpose is. They'll give vague answers like, you know, it's atmospheric research, ionospheric studies.
Right.
I mean, but what does that mean? And to the average layperson, they'll just pause at that point, accept the answer, and presume, well, there's scientists involved, so it can't be nefarious. I think Hitler had a bunch of scientists working for him too, though. Oh, but I forgot, those scientists at the end of the war came over to the United States and then started working for us.
Right.
How could that go wrong?
Exactly.
I mean, wasn't Werner von Braun the head of NASA after being a lead role in the SS?
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want to talk about that, right? We can't. We can't bring that up.
Yeah, it's not possible that these Nazis and SS officers came over here with some negative ideas. I mean, obviously the war ended, so they just immediately switched sides and became good. Because that's how life works, right?
And given cushy contracts and a beautiful house and and new names and anonymity, and they could live in the United States and work. That was part of the deal.
I grew up on Long Island, and anybody can do some research. Check out Camp Siegfried on the east end of Long Island, right over where Nikola Tesla's facility was in Wardenclyffe. Camp Siegfried was a post-World War II facility where all of the Nazis would congregate in full Nazi regalia in the United States. It was a recreational area for post-World War II Nazis that were not hiding anything. There was a group called the Bund, which was basically Americans or Germans post-World War II that were very supportive of the Nazi concepts. Camp Siegfried, you can Google it, folks. You'll see pictures that'll blow your mind. It looks like Nazi marching groups, just like Hitler had in Germany, but this was happening on Long Island in New York after we supposedly won the war. When all the Operation Paperclip scientists came over, it was tolerated, it was welcomed, it was invited. We allowed them into some of the highest offices of our country and pretended for some reason that they were no longer evil. Well, where did these people go to? They all had systems of communication. They all had modalities of keeping things secret and compartmentalized in their own fashion before they came here. Are we to be so naive to think that when they infiltrated us over here, that they no longer maintained similar lines of secret communication to continue their intended original plans prior to losing the war?
Of course. Just like in Argentina, where the Third Reich reestablished itself, and where, I mean, entire cities of Misiones and others in Argentina just basically became the new Third Reich. The transportation of those individuals into these other countries. It's like the secondary Germany. Eric, I could talk to you for hours about all of this. I just want to get you out of here on this. Just give me your final thoughts on this, where things stand with disclosure. You talked about it being a circus, heading into the election. And what do you think we're going to see maybe pre-election, after the election?
I think we're going to see some sort of spark to a fire. And that fire could be a false alien invasion, to get continuity of government activities rolling. I believe the people, the crowd of people watching the supposed disclosure researchers and stuff, they need to start demanding actionable intelligence instead of all this foo-foo sci-fi, space arcs are warming up under the ice in Antarctica. I mean, come on, really? Folks, get your head out of your asses. These people are not journalists. They're not following any journalistic integrity. They're basically science fiction authors that have figured out a new avenue. Instead of writing books, they're now podcasters that are making up science fiction. Their supposed intelligence and their supposed whistleblowers are junk at best. And we, the people, deserve better than that. We deserve the truth. We deserve to get the proverbial boot off of our throat from the oppressors that are taking advantage of disparity in the technologies that we use and the technologies that they possess. It's getting really ridiculous, and we're screaming fast down a very slippery slope of finding ourselves in a position where if we don't do something now, we may find that our great-grandchildren will still be under that boot because we chose to do fucking nothing.
Well said. Well said. Wake up, everyone. Wake up, everyone.
Go figure. Follow me.